she lied. Every promise she ever made to me was a lie. I thought I had a family, a home, until I walked in and saw her with him, the man I despised most in the world, laughing in my bed, my children, stolen by her false accusations. Her lover, his uncle's a judge. Yeah, the system's rigged, but I'm done playing fair. This isn't about justice anymore, it's about revenge. And when it all burns down, they'll know exactly who lit the match. They were sitting on the back of the pickup truck, enjoying the bright light of a full moon, cold beers in hand. They were parked on a high hill, looking down at the little town they grew up in, which twinkled in the valley. It was a lovely, though somewhat bittersweet night, perfect for remembering the past. Do you remember a night like this when we were sitting here with friends, playing guitars and singing songs we made up on the spot? Woody asked. Will laughed. Yeah, Woody, we were what, 17 or 18? Earl paid the creeper $20 to bring us 2 bottles of Mad Dog 2020, and by this time of night we were feeling it. I felt terrible the next morning. I'm still not a fan of wine. But we created some great songs that night. By the way, what happened to that classic you said would be a hit? I play it at every show we do as long as the crowd is lively. It always gets everyone singing along with me. I appreciate the little money I get from it, but why haven't you recorded it yet? Well, Will, country music labels don't seem to like the title or the lyrics. But come on! The songs I hear playing everywhere make I Love You So Much I Could Burst sound like a children's song. It's just a love song with some strong words. It's not disrespectful. Okay, it's a bit bold, but not like the other genres I hear. We don't use any inappropriate words. Dude, you've been in the country for too long, it's hip-hop music now. Then get a hip-hop label to record it. I've written so many songs over the years, but they're all just as bold. I've written a dozen in the last month. Get someone to record that and we can both profit. I know you're joking, Will, but seriously, come on. Things have gotten complicated here, and it's clear it's time for you to move on. Pack your pen, paper, devices, whatever clothes you have, start your old pickup, and let's head for Interstate 40. Even the musicians in Nashville see your talent. We'll be just fine, I promise. That's a tempting offer, Woody, but part of me wants to keep trying here. The problem is, one of my biggest obstacles is messing with my situation, making it harder to move forward. Well, it seems that's not the only thing. Her family thinks the same, and you know how much influence they have. Will took a long sip of his beer, thinking about what seemed impossible. What can I say, Woody? How could anyone think I've done something I haven't? Has anyone ever seen one of them with a mark? Have they ever visited the doctor for anything that happened? No, because nothing happened. The issue is, how can I show that nothing ever happened when my wife doesn't tell the truth, and my kids aren't trusted to give reliable information, plus the judge is related to her? Will sat on the back of the truck, a beer bottle in hand. He took a sip and asked, I'm in trouble, aren't I? Dawn found them on the highway north of Waco. Woody and Will had a big cooler filled with Lone Star beer and another cooler packed with deer and wild hog sausage in the truck bed. The second seat held Will's few belongings. Starting over meant moving on, so he left behind anything that reminded him of his wife. But as he finished loading up, he realized he hadn't kept much that mattered to him in his first 28 years. He hoped the next 28 would be better. Woody, who usually slept until noon after late nights, was wide awake from coffee and snacks and wouldn't stop talking. After telling Will for the 14th time how exciting this would be writing songs and enjoying new adventures, Will finally asked him to slow down and focus on what was ahead. How many more stops do we have on the tour? Only 3 more, buddy, and they are all drivable from Nashville, Woody said. 3 more stops to complete the contract made Will feel better. But don't think you're just along for the ride. You'll be playing and singing with me. I already got the go-ahead to add you. You won't earn much, but you'll have food, a place to stay, and chances to meet fans. We won't be playing in the biggest places, so sometimes you need to be clever, but there will always be folks who want to connect with a talented musician, even if they don't know his name. 2 weeks later, along with the studio musicians the label provided, they were on a leased bus heading to the Coyote in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a small dance venue, followed by a bigger concert at the Savannah Arena. After that, they would return to North Charleston's outdoor venue, Around the Bend. Neither concert sold out, which Woody felt was due to the poor response to his second album, made up of songs written by the label's songwriters. The songs were well made and aimed at the younger audience that bought most of today's music, but they lacked the depth his fans wanted. They were all style, no substance, and Woody's audience craved something richer. They preferred the raw energy of his first album and the songs he played in lively dance halls. Instead, the record label dressed him up and polished him, providing smooth musicians to support him, and sent him out to win over fans of a different style. They liked him about as much as he liked them, and after a quick rise in his career, things were now going down. Luckily, this was his last duty to the label, which had lost interest in him just like the fans who favored the new country sound. At their final practice before heading to the Coyote, Woody gave out sheets for some new songs we're going to try this weekend. The musicians, who were together for just a few more days, shrugged. They were getting paid regardless of what they played. After practice, Woody offered to buy drinks for everyone at Commodore Grill, but only the drummer Gary and the bass player Danny joined him. After enjoying a few pitchers, Woody and Will noticed a young singer who played the keyboard. She had a warm smile when she played cheerful songs, but it was her deeper, meaningful lyrics that captured their hearts. "Boys, we all know this is our last big moment," Woody told Danny and Gary. "The music we're playing isn't my style, and I am going back to my roots. That probably means I'm moving to Austin with Will, who will be my bass player. Sorry, Danny, but he's also the one who wrote most of the hits on the first album and my best friend." "Dude, I can play 7 instruments if you count the harmonica and accordion, but I'm best at steel guitar, fiddle, and banjo. Every good country band needs those, and I can even play some saxophone if you want a blues feel." "So if you're asking if I'm interested, yes, I am. If you really mean to play real country music instead of the pop stuff, I'm still available, and I hear Austin has some great chances." "Sounds like you still need a drummer, and I'm available. My wife filed for divorce last month. Apparently, I wasn't meeting her needs, so she moved on. But that's fine with me. Will, with Gary on drums and Danny playing other instruments, we just need a keyboard player who can sing backup, do duets, and lead some songs. Have you noticed anyone recently?" "Yes, and she's off stage talking to the manager. Does anyone know what she drinks?" "Dark beer," came a reply from the nearby table. "I know because I've bought her a dozen trying to ask her out, but it didn't work. Maybe you'll have better luck." Will went to the bar, got a dark beer, and walked over to where the 2 women were talking. He kept a little distance to give them space, but the dark-haired singer noticed him and stopped. The stage manager turned to Will and asked, "Can I help you?" "No, but maybe this talented young lady can." He turned to the singer. "We're sitting right over there, and we were really impressed with your songs and your playing. Can we talk to you for a few minutes about a band we're starting? I noticed you 4 and liked your support. You're starting a band? I'm not sure if I fit Mr. West's style, but I'll come and listen." Can we continue this talk later? Of course, any time. It might not matter anyway if you take the job. Will introduced Miss Lila Livingston to the group. She sat down and asked, "How did you know I like beer?" The cowboy at the next table tipped his hat, and Will gave him credit. Lila smiled and said, "Maybe I misunderstood you before. I'm sorry, and thank you for remembering." "No, you didn't misunderstand me, but I appreciate your thanks. You have a wonderful presence, and I'd love to hear your voice more, no matter the situation." The talk with Lila was simple once Woody promised he was leaving the pop country scene. Will asked how many more songs she had that explored deep themes. Woody, along with his backup musicians, Will on bass guitar, Gary on different instruments, and Lila on keyboard, finished the mini-tour that freed Woody from his contract for the second album. Thankfully, they did, as the audiences were mostly quiet, and some were vocal about not liking most songs from that album. What they enjoyed was the new stuff we're trying out, which was raw and not complete, but shared exciting stories that made people want to dance, laugh, or think. Once their obligations ended, Gary picked up his last check, said goodbye to his manager, and parted ways. The label offered him an unfavorable contract for a new album, which he declined, and they left on good terms. Danny owned a nice passenger van, Gary had a newer SUV, and Woody drove a fancy white truck. Lila had her clothes, her keyboard, a couple of other instruments, but no ride. Will was the first to offer help, and she quickly accepted. Their packed vehicles got on I-40 at 6 a.m., rolled through Memphis to Jackson, took I-30 through Little Rock and Texarkana, and headed south of Dallas to I-35E. They took breaks, stretched their legs, and bought some fruit and poppy seed kolaches in West. The kolaches would be dessert after they ate at Heitmiller's Steakhouse in Waco, just a little further down the road. They arrived in Austin at 7 p.m. and went straight to the apartments Woody had rented online. The apartments were old but had some updates inside. Their charm lay in their location South First and Barton Springs Road, just a few blocks from the running paths by Lady Bird Lake, a mile from Barton Springs and its green fields, and only minutes from Austin's lively music scene. Woody had enough money for a two-bedroom apartment of his own, but Gary and Danny were sharing another two-bedroom with Lila and Will. Woody had rented a space to practice further down South First, near the food trucks. They dropped off their instruments there after picking up the key from a mechanic next door. The place was sturdy and safe, having been used by a Tejano band that had stopped playing a few months earlier. The owner was pleased to have a new band and some income. Property taxes in Austin were high. Will found himself reflecting when he realized it only took a few trips to move all his things in, and it didn't take up much room. He didn't have much to show for a man nearing 30. The apartments were not furnished, so Woody had gotten some nice furniture from Rent-A-Center. They were not sure if they would own the furniture eventually, but they hoped not. Another thing was that there were no washer-dryer hookups, but 2 laundromats were available nearby. Will felt like he was back in college, but no one else seemed to mind. Will had what Woody called a treasure chest of songs he had written over the years. These songs celebrated happy times and mourned losses. They also told stories about his loving wife during their early years, from the joy of welcoming children to the challenges they faced later. The box had filled up quickly after she left with another man, taking the kids, home, and possessions with her. They would have taken his money too, but he had set up a trust for his kids when he first started earning a decent income. He swiftly moved most of his cash and investments into their trusts and made Robert Hart, his lawyer and close friend, the trustee. When Will decided to leave with Woody, he quit his job and disappeared, giving Hart power of attorney. Lila also had a treasure trove, but hers was different. She leaned towards folk and blues, while Will favored country, southern rock, and outlaw music. His style already included a folk element, and he was intrigued by the storytelling in folk music, especially that from the Great Smoky Mountains where Lila was from. Together, they worked hard to turn their words into songs that connected with people and made them feel something. The more experienced members of the band took the lead in this area, while Lila and Will bounced ideas off each other as they polished their lyrics. Most of their work happened in the apartment. Woody, Danny, and Gary spent more time in their new studio. After being away for 10 weeks, on Friday, Will borrowed Gary's phone to check in with his lawyer. As expected, she changed the divorce papers to say he abandoned her and was asking for everything. So far, Robert had not replied to her request for details about Will's finances, but he needed to respond in the next 2 weeks. He had the information but wanted to talk to Will first. "Sure. You can share all my financial details. They will show that my savings and investments went into my children's trust fund. Aside from my retirement account, all I have is my old truck and the house she wanted to buy. The bank owns more of it than I do. She can take the house if I can keep my retirement savings. Otherwise, we can sell it and split the money along with my retirement funds. There is more than enough money in the kids' trust funds for their needs, but she won't get a cent. She needs to give you valid receipts for the children, and you pay those. No memberships for my 4-year-old son, and no extra costs for my 6-year-old daughter. None of that. I'm also not paying for full-time childcare so she can stay home. As long as she doesn't have a job, I won't cover those costs. If she finds work, I'll pay half. You know his uncle, the judge, is going to rule against you, Will. He'll order some kind of support and likely require you to keep paying for the house and utilities. Let him try. She moved her new partner into the house I've been paying for. They can either leave and sell it or handle the payments themselves. She's used all my money. He can order whatever he likes, but I'm several states away, and the order won't mean much here. Just let them know this. You can't get something from nothing. I only have a little income coming in each month. I'm living carefully with no money coming in soon. Remind her that accusing me of bad behavior has made it hard for me to find a job. I'm moving around doing odd jobs just to have a place to stay, and it's all because of her. If she would take back her accusations, offer reasonable visitations, and accept the agreement I mentioned, I would sign the divorce papers right away, and they can go on with their lives. Finally, Robert, tell her that I said what goes around comes around, and she should be ready for consequences in about 6 months. Robert reminded him to stay calm, avoid Texas, especially the Bexar County area, and asked how to contact him if needed. Will replied to call this phone, which belonged to another worker like him. It was a Kentucky number, which he thought would confuse anyone who found it. When Gary saw Will's troubled face as he returned the phone, he asked if everything was all right. Will replied, "No, but yes. My wife has hurt me deeply, and now she wants to take away my hope." That's the no part. The yes part is I plan to take a break from my usual routine today. I'm going to put on my work boots and clothes to clean up the mess along the creek near our apartments. That way, when I spend time outside, I can enjoy the beauty of nature instead of seeing trash. After that, I want to explore 6th Street to see what all the excitement is about. I'd like to do this with friends, but I will go alone if you all prefer to be creative while I have my fun. While they were cleaning up their part of the creek, some neighbors came by and asked to join in. Will and a few neighbors had tools, which made it easier to clear branches and brush that blocked their view of the gently flowing water. Even though the creek probably belonged to the city of Austin, no one seemed worried about getting into trouble for tidying it up a bit. Once they finished their work, they had cleared a whole section of the creek beside the apartments, and gathered a good amount of debris for the city to pick up. One neighbor said she would call to arrange that. They decided to head to the picnic area near the pool to enjoy a refreshing drink and celebrate their hard work. People arrived with their chairs and drinks, still in their work clothes, and began to chat and get to know each other. As the sky darkened, Will stood up and mentioned he was going to take a shower, get dressed, and celebrate some more on 6th Street. He would love to have some friends join him. About half of the 30-something people from the cleanup crew thought that sounded like a fun idea and went to change, agreeing to meet at Maggie May's in an hour. Once he was cleaned up and in his nice boots, Will took a seat on the couch and called for Lila to join him. When she stepped out of her bathroom, he was surprised by how she looked. She was petite at around 5'3", with lovely features and a pleasant expression. She usually looked nice, but tonight her hair was in a long braid and she was wearing makeup, a stylish top, fitted jeans, and nice boots. He looked a little too long and she turned red, getting a bit defensive. "Quit staring at me like that!" "I'm sorry, Lila. You caught me off guard. I had no idea you looked this great. If you'll join me, I would love to be your escort tonight and keep things enjoyable." "Just a minute. Let me grab my things," she said, still blushing. "The way you look could attract attention." "You really are funny," she replied with another blush. "I know I'm not much to look at, but I appreciate your kindness." Surprised by her words, he said, "Come with me," and brought her in front of a mirror. "Are you serious? You look fantastic. Don't say otherwise because my eyes don't lie. Wait until the others see you." When people approached the van, their surprised reactions confirmed Will's prediction, and Lila's cheeks grew a bit redder. Will thought she looked happy, shy, and defensive all at once. "Lila, why are you hiding all that under those clothes? You are a real treasure waiting to be discovered. We need to get you out more often," Woody exclaimed. Still a little flustered but glad, she climbed into the van and took a seat behind Gary. Will joined them and sat next to Gary. The apartment complex had a few adults close to Will and Woody's age, but most were younger than Gary and Danny, who were 26. Most of them were university students, so they were used to managing their studies and social life. Tonight they decided to enjoy the company of their new friends. Will noticed that no one had asked about Lila's age. She looked young in her casual clothes, but when she dressed up, she seemed like a sophisticated young lady. He planned to find out at the right moment, though it wasn't urgent. They parked several blocks away and were glad to find a spot. Woody led them to Maggie May's, a place he had played at in the past. The manager recognized him immediately. They hugged, reminisced, and insisted on seating Woody and his friends at a special table near the bar. The first round of drinks was on the house, and when Woody mentioned they would be joined by more friends, the staff moved some people and cleared extra tables nearby. When they took drink orders, Will asked if they served real margaritas on the rocks or if they were the weak ones from a machine. The waiter took that the wrong way and assured Will that they were neither weak nor machine-made. Will decided to order a margarita on the rocks. Woody watched the exchange and said, "Oh no, watch out, Will's drinking tequila." Gary asked, "What's the story behind that?" Woody laughed. "Let's just say our quiet friend can get quite talkative and bold after a bit of tequila. We need to keep an eye on him and be ready to step in if needed since he can get a bit carried away." They all laughed, imagining quiet Will being the center of attention. In total, 22 others from the complex joined them, and their lively group attracted even more people. By the third drink, Will was indeed cheerful. He told jokes, danced with everyone in their group, led applause for the band, and after a fourth drink, he encouraged them to play a song for line dancing. He insisted that everyone join in, which created a fun and lively atmosphere on the dance floor. The band took a break and then started playing their usual songs from rock bands of the 1970s and 1980s, and everyone began to dance again. Will woke up with a headache and an upset stomach. Once he could focus, he realized he was in his bed. It was daylight outside, and he could smell a strange mix of perfume and bacon. He tried to get up, but his head and stomach hurt, so he lay back down and shut his eyes. "Are you awake?" a woman's voice asked a few minutes later. "Just about. Who are you?" "You don't remember the fun we had last night?" She handed him a glass of water with some pills for his headache, encouraging him to take them. "Sorry, sometimes tequila does that to me." "Did I miss anything exciting?" he replied after taking the medicine. "Ha! You're lucky to be here because Lila helped you on one side, and I helped on the other side to get you from the van down the stairs and into the apartment. You were quite entertaining, but then you spent a long time in the bathroom. You finally came back to bed but fell fast asleep before telling any of the stories you promised." "Us? Lila helped you with everything?" he asked, surprised. "Of course. She was a big help, even though she was a bit tipsy, too. Luckily, our friend Danny didn't join in on the tequila shots because he had to drive." "I really appreciate your help. What's your name?" "You really don't know, do you? I'm Lena Carolina Novak. I'm another musician trying to get by in Austin. You introduced me to your friends last night. Do you remember any of it?" "Sort of. It's all a little fuzzy." "You two, come eat," Lila called. Will got up, stretched, and then remembered he was still in his boxers. Too late to worry about that, he thought as he quickly pulled on a clean shirt. "No shirt? That might make Lila excited," Lena joked. "She had quite a reaction to you last night. I thought she might want to spend more time with you, but when I started to sit on the bed with you, she got a bit jealous and made me sleep in her room." "I can hear you. Come eat right now. I'm not going to let you keep saying things about me." Lena laughed. Will, feeling a bit better, asked, "So she really wanted you in her room? Are you too close?" "No, but she's sweet and I'm open to new experiences." "But she really likes you." Will couldn't believe it. He was about to ask more when Lila appeared in the doorway, wearing a big shirt that didn't cover her shorts, which showed off her long legs. He wondered why, after weeks of casual outfits, she suddenly looked so stunning. "Wait! Are you twins? Standing next to each other, you look so much alike, but with different hair colors. Even your names, Lena and Lila. You both have similar features, with lovely legs and small waists that draw attention." "You must be related." Lena pulled Lila through the door, wrapping her arm around Lila's waist as they walked toward the kitchen. She looked back and playfully pointed out, "He seems to be watching us." They giggled when they noticed Will turning red. He quickly gathered himself and followed, eager to join them. During breakfast, the girls teased Will about his dishwashing skills. He joked that he would splash them with cold water if they didn't calm down, which made them laugh as they ran off to the bedroom. Lena paused at the door and called to him, "Go get dressed. We have practice at the studio in 20 minutes. Will was surprised to see Lila so full of energy. Today she was lively and playful, a big change from her usual quiet self. He wondered what caused this change, especially with Lena around. That thought led him to another. For practice? Was Lena joining the band? This idea made him curious about what the day would hold. Woody was mainly a guitarist but could also play the keyboard and trumpet. Will, who was not a professional musician, mainly focused on guitar while Danny played the drums. Lena showed off her impressive violin skills, easily switching to fiddle tunes like those of Charlie Daniels. She confidently said she could also play the banjo and steel guitar. With Gary, Lila, and Lena in the band, they had a wide range of musical styles to explore. The mood was lively as they worked on their songs. Around 2 o'clock, their music session was interrupted by hunger, so they headed to a food truck for a late lunch. They found a picnic table under a large oak tree and relaxed while they ate. Lena brought a folder and started chatting quietly with Lila as they looked through it. They exchanged glances at Will, leading Lena to ask, "Will, do we need to encourage you to share your story? Or are you ready to tell us? Because we'd be happy to grab a drink if that helps. We all feel the emotions in your songs, and it seems like it's time for you to share with us. So, are you ready to open up, or should we make a trip to Twin Liquors?" Woody added, "We've made good progress already. Let me grab some drinks on the way back to my place and we can talk there. I have plenty of space, and it's definitely time for you to share your story." As music from Woody's first album played softly, a warm April breeze filled the air in Austin. Everyone turned to Will, who began to speak. "I don't have much to share. If you listen to my songs in order, you'll find the story of my adult life. Woody left for Nashville with the music we made in high school. I found stability when I married the homecoming queen and built a good career with help from my father-in-law. We had lovely children whom their grandparents cherished, and I managed to finish my degree while working. I loved my wife deeply, and she loved me too. That's where things got complicated. Her parents worried about our marriage, but she was determined, and I was too young to handle all these emotions properly. For a few years, we seemed like the perfect couple, and she was a great mother. But as our kids got older, she preferred them to be in childcare instead of looking after them herself. She frequently wanted a new car, a bigger house, and the latest clothes. While she motivated me to advance my career for better financial stability, she began to resent how much time I spent working. Even though we talked about it, she pushed me to take on more work, expecting that I could manage everything. At this point, her behavior changed a lot. After we started to drift apart, things got worse when she began a relationship outside our marriage and filed for divorce, making false claims against me. This situation separated me from my children, and even though many knew I was a caring father, her accusations took a toll on all of us. My work with Woody led us to create an album called The Dregs of Humanity. It aims to bring attention to some serious issues in society, everything from those who harm children to those who support such actions. This project has a dual purpose: to address real problems in an engaging way while also being successful commercially. I hope we can blend creativity with the need to avoid any legal issues, since we want to connect positively with our audience. We're looking for a new way to share my story and confront those who tried to bring me down. Yeah, I know it sounds dramatic, but I don't have any other way to fight back. Are we talking about a change like Willie and the boys moving to Austin, or something even more different? Gary asked. I'm fearless because I have nothing to lose. We should turn to our brave leader, who is also looking for new beginnings, to decide, Will answered. Woody paused for a moment. Friends, I'm excited about being creative, but in the end we need to make money or this could end quickly. My main fans are country music lovers who value authenticity. The label tried to change me into a pop country star, but it didn't work. Younger audiences didn't show up, and my fans were let down. Just ask about the last 3 stops on the tour. The Billy Goat Hill pundits will build their own audience over time, but we need my fans to support us from the start and then expand from there. If you haven't heard my first album, you should check it out to see what people enjoy. Ha ha! Then you can hear my second album and find out what people don't like. Will paused for a moment. Billy Goat Hill pundits, huh? I like that. But the rest of the group doesn't know what's coming. When do we share it with them? I'm waiting on you. I don't want any trouble that could affect my bass player, and I'm unsure about your legal situation. My uncle said the ranch house is ready whenever we are. Are you set to go? I'm always ready. As far as I know, the law isn't interested in me, but I can check with Robert if you want. If he gives the green light, when do we head out? Woody asked the other band members, and they all shrugged and said, whenever. He suggested, how about around noon tomorrow? It's a 3-hour drive. By 11:30, they had all the instruments loaded into the van, and they were on their way south. Gary and Danny were in the van while the others rode in Woody's diesel truck. Will drove, Woody sat next to him, and the ladies were in the back seat. Woody used Bluetooth to play his first album from his phone, and they shared their thoughts as they listened. He then played the second album, which sparked even more discussion. Their only stop was for groceries at the H-E-B in Pleasanton. The drinks filled a third of the truck bed. They bought 3 coolers to keep their supplies fresh. A big one for ice, a medium one for meat and dairy, and a smaller wheeled one filled with drinks. Lila couldn't believe the amount they bought and asked if they were staying a month. Woody replied they had enough for 3 days but planned for some visitors. The ranch house was located on the Frio River near Tilden, just a few miles from Choke Canyon Reservoir. The river was full from the lake, creating a lush spot in the dry South Texas area. It was the first time the girls from Tennessee and North Carolina and the boys from Kentucky and Georgia saw the brush country. Woody and Will knew that people either loved it or couldn't stand it. This was true for both locals and newcomers, and many local kids chose not to come back after college. While areas like the Hill Country, Austin, and San Antonio grew quickly, population in South and West Texas had been slowly declining until a retired oil engineer discovered how to extract oil from shale. Now, more people and heavy traffic filled the area, which locals didn't always welcome, though they appreciated the business and the income it brought. Woody and Will glanced at their bandmates and were happy to see no one had that look that usually meant they wanted to leave. They exchanged smiles and nodded at each other. They rode around the ranch in a 3-seat ATV, taking in the sights of cattle, horses, deer, quail, and wild hogs. The newcomers were impressed, and the cooler full of drinks became emptier. By the time they returned to the river and the house, everyone was cheerful and chatty, which meant Gary had to refill the drink cooler. Will cooked fajitas while others chopped tomatoes and lettuce and sliced avocados. Woody made fresh salsa with peppers. At first, to the surprise of the Texans, the Southerners called them wraps, but quickly realized they were actually fajita tacos once the salsa and pico de gallo were added. As the spice level increased, so did the drink consumption. Lila, Lena, Woody, and Will took out their guitars, Danny grabbed a tub, and Gary got his harmonica. They played some classic George Strait songs, including All My Exes Live in Texas, which sparked a chat about the old Frio River where they had learned to swim. The newcomers found out that George was from nearby Pearsall and that this was indeed the Frio River. They also learned about the headwaters, Garner State Park, Concan, and the fun of floating down the river, promising to try it one day soon. Each songwriter shared some of their own music, and everyone enjoyed what they heard. As the evening wrapped up, Woody finished the night with his favorite song, bringing joy to everyone around. After the final song, they headed off to their rooms in the large old ranch house. Woody had the master suite on the north wing. Gary and Danny shared bedrooms with a shared bathroom in the same area. Will's room was on the south wing next to Lila and Lena's double beds, who shared a bathroom across the hall. "Let me go first," he suggested. "I'll be out in 10 minutes and you two will take longer." Lena joked with Lila about how much time she spent in the bathroom, and they playfully bantered about shower times. Will made a lighthearted comment about saving time by sharing the shower, but it was quickly laughed off. Lila got shy and hurried into the bathroom while Lena and Will shared a chuckle, continuing their friendly teasing. Later, as they settled into their rooms, Will heard soft giggles and quiet conversations through the wall. He teased them, saying he could hear them. But the night went on quietly without any more fun. Lila and Lena enjoyed their private moment, talking about their day before finally falling asleep. Will listened to the gentle sounds of the house settling and let his mind wander to the peaceful quiet that surrounded the group. He quietly climbed out of bed, tiptoed down the hall, and carefully opened the door a little. He noticed the girls were lying with their feet facing the door, and he saw Lena resting a bit on Lila. He pushed the door open a little more and saw Lena's hand resting gently on Lila. Lena's lips moved slowly down Lila's neck, touching softly as she went. The baby doll top was laying on the pillow beside Lila's head, giving Will a view of her, looking relaxed and happy with Lena's kindness. Will felt a rush of emotions and thought about his own feelings as he watched them, taken by the moment. Will stepped back out of the room and went to his own, wanting to gather his thoughts. Woody, Will, Gary, and Danny were drinking coffee on the deck outside the kitchen when Lena and Lila came in. Will could see them getting coffee, sharing playful glances, and stepping outside with shy smiles. "Well, well, well," Woody said. "Lena and Lila decided to join us, and it's only 9:30. What did you two do last night that has you looking so tired? We heard when you went to bed because the house got quiet, but were you really that busy before bedtime?" Lena smiled brightly, but Lila looked down, clearly shy. Will took her arm and pulled her next to him. "Sit on my lap, and I'll keep you safe from mean Woody." She seemed unsure, but he encouraged her to join, and she settled against him, trying not to look at anyone, which made everyone laugh and tease. She kept hiding, but managed a small smile. Lena patted her head and giggled. "Okay, enough teasing. Sometimes girls just want to have fun," Will said with a grin. "Let's let the girls be. Let's eat and then get to work. I have a project I want to finish this morning." Breakfast was full of laughter. Lila climbed off Will's lap to take a seat when he tried to feed her, and by the end of breakfast, they had begun to see a more lively side of Lila. That energy carried into the work session. As Will introduced the song he wanted to finish, the mood changed. It began, "I'll never lie to you," swore the liar. "I'll never cheat on you," vowed the cheater. "He doesn't love you like I do." He honestly promised, knowing his love wasn't true. The lyrics told an interesting story about someone who wasn't honest, and they worked on it until the song was ready for a final review. It was only 2 p.m. when they finished, and Will suggested they look at another song from his notebook. "Hey, this next one needs to be a bit lighter. We need something cheerful to balance it out," Woody said, and everyone agreed. "Exactly, my friends. This one is for our lovely ladies. I think they can really make it work, maybe even get it on the charts. It's called I Wanna. Baby, I want a new SUV with a big screen TV for me. And the kids. Baby, I want a bigger home with a garden and a gnome for me. And the kids. Baby, I want a baby, I want a baby, I want a baby, I want a baby. You need to get me what I want. I really want a swimming pool to relax in during school for me. And the kids, and a hot tub in a gazebo for me, and the kids. I also want a pair of tall boots." Once the girls got excited, they added more lines and turned it into a fun pop country song. They bounced around on stage, full of life. Woody told them that it could last 10 minutes during live shows, but for the album, it had to be 4 minutes to get more airplay and 3 would be best. At 6, Woody said it was time to stop for the day. He told them to take showers, get dressed for stargazing and guitar playing, and be in the van in 1 hour. The guys set up lawn chairs while they waited for the girls, whistling and making a fuss when they arrived with their hair braided, wearing white shorts and tank tops. "These girls look great!" Woody shouted, and Will led the clapping. Lena smiled and showed off her outfit. Lila tried to do the same, but looked a bit shy. Still, she was charming. Before they drove out of town, Woody asked Will, "What did your lawyer say? Are we good? If not, we can figure something else out." Will assured him that everything was fine, so they kept going until they reached a little Mexican restaurant outside of town. After enjoying some drinks, nachos, enchiladas, tacos, and many chips and salsa, they got back in the van and rode quietly through Cowtown, which had a population of 4,446, heading to Billy Goat Hill. They arranged their chairs in a semicircle facing the town and listened as Woody spoke. "That's our hometown, Will and I. It doesn't look like much, and we aren't welcomed there anymore, but it's where we grew up. Down there, where you see the line of trees, is the river where we learned to swim. Just like George Strait learned to swim in the Frio, we learned to swim in the Nueces. See that spot where the dirt road meets the trees? The river runs through there, and that's where Will had a memorable moment. Lena, why don't you sing that song for us?" Will was sitting next to her, and they sang together when the lyrics told his story. "With stealing your good name?" Lila said with a hint of annoyance. "Look," Will started, a bit defensive. "I have a plan, but—" Their moment was interrupted by the lights of a truck coming up the hill from the highway and parking beside the van. A big man with long brown hair and a beard jumped out, saying, "He was right! Paco said he saw a circle of chairs and heard guitar music when he passed by. Sierra, call and tell them to come on." He turned to the group. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tim, or Timbo to my friends. We'll introduce ourselves properly in a moment, but first, where have you all been? One moment we're enjoying a drink and making plans, and the next, you're all gone. What happened?" "Things happened, Timbo." Wet Willie finally realized he couldn't stay, so Rob got his signed power of attorney, and we left for Tennessee. Paco drove up in his truck, followed by another car with people getting out. The reunion lasted about 15 minutes, with everyone introducing themselves. The drinks started flowing faster, and another hour passed. Big Timbo had clearly enjoyed a lot of whiskey and was in a cheerful mood. So were Lila, Lena, Woody, Danny, Gary, and most of the group, which had grown to 22. "So, Tennessee, Wet, did you go back there to help write new songs for the crowd?" "Leave me out of it," Woody replied, a bit unsteady. "They made me do that, but I quit. Our main songwriter over there says we're going to do something unique, whatever that means, but it won't be pop." "What does unique sound like?" Paco asked. Instead of answering, Will started playing a song he wrote called Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed. It was about a wife who always wants more, even though she has a lot. She wants her husband to take a job that both he and her father warn will keep him away, and then she ends up getting closer to someone else because he is gone too much. He finds her with this other person, confronts him when he's teased, and faces the results of his actions, losing everything he cares about. After Will finished singing, it got quiet for a few seconds. Then Paco said, "Well, that was enough to get old Bubba thinking." They played for another hour, and the crowd at home reacted with laughs and tears. "Looks like the new songs are a hit back home at least," Woody said drunkenly as they got back in the van. "Lots of work to do, but I think we're getting somewhere," Lena said before moving to a back seat and falling asleep. The rest didn't last much longer. Will drove back in silence, thinking about Lila's earlier challenge. Did he give in too easily? Forget the property and the mess, but what about his kids? "Stay the course," think long-term, he reminded himself. You might lose every battle, but you can still win the war. They slept until 9, took the Alka-Seltzer they had, cooked beans, and worked on music from 10 until 2. The crew from last night and a bunch of other friends are going to start arriving in an hour, Woody said. They'll help cook and set things up, but we need to prepare the salad, season the meats, and do all the other tasks, so go freshen up and get ready. The group from last night had doubled to 32 happy people as more guests arrived, and the evening continued joyfully. It was clear that someone was going to ask Woody to sing something from the old days when we all used to sit together. He happily accepted while Will made sure everyone had a cold drink, though not everyone in the group had overindulged. After a few songs, which received cheers and applause, Woody paused and spoke casually. While I've been singing, the person behind those songs has been here making sure you all are happy as usual. Will, why don't you come up here so we can show everyone another side of you? Will chuckled, picked up his guitar, and sat down. The drunk anthem? He asked. Woody smiled and started playing, with Will joining in to sing I Love You So Much. Everyone enjoyed it, laughing and cheering as Will called out, Olsen twins, come up here and sing the tribute to my ex-wife. Lena and Lila stood and walked into the circle, giggling as they struck fun poses. Each band member grabbed an instrument to play I Wanta. The girls sang in playful tones, dancing and charming the men they sang to. Lena even danced near Timbo, which made everyone laugh at Tim's response and Sierra's mock annoyance. The guys kept playing while the girls created new verses about fun things like fancy outfits, exciting adventures, and gifts for friends. It was very funny, and when Woody ended with, You can't have everything you want, Lena playfully responded, Please, baby, don't let down your princess. Will's ex-wife's ex-best friend let the laughter die down and said, She's going to be surprised when she hears that song. Her parents, siblings, and even her old friends like me will recognize it right away. When can we buy a copy? I want to play it on the country fair parade float we're making. We could dress up like you-know-who, pose, and dance like Lena and Lila. It will be amazing. Back in Austin, their fun turned into hard work. They practiced songs for 6 hours each day, but they also made time to exercise, lift weights, run, swim at Barton Springs and Deep Eddy, and kayak on Lady Bird Lake. They took turns making breakfast, grabbed lunch at taco trucks if they weren't busy, and either cooked dinner or went to one of Austin's popular restaurants. The nice breeze by Lake Austin made places like Hula Hut and Obbles on the lake favorites, but they also enjoyed the local history of spots like Threadgills, El Rancho, El Patio, Schultz Garden, Cisco, Hills, and Hofbrau. They loved the burgers at Dirty Martin's and ice cream at Sandy's, which was close to their homes. They became part of the lively culture in Austin, and it was at the famous Broken Spoke where they met the man who would eventually become their manager. Barry Donaldson was 26 years old and was a huge fan of Woody's first album. He was already managing 3 successful local bands in Austin and impressed them by saying he thought the record company was making a mistake with Woody's second album. They invited him to listen to the early versions of Woody's third album. After hearing it, he eagerly asked to become their manager. This could be a fantastic album. I don't know how you found these songwriters and musicians, but I've never worked with a group that has such a bright future. Please let me be a part of it. My team and I are skilled at using technology, social media, and online platforms to help our clients, and we also know how to promote their music on radio, TV, and live shows. Only one of our clients has gone national so far, but I am sure you all will, and that will be a new challenge for us. After promising to advise without getting in the way, they signed with him, and the Billy Goat Hill pundits finally had a manager who enjoyed their music. He took care of the business side that had been a hassle for Woody, allowing them to concentrate on their music. Woody, Gary, and Danny would sometimes have friends over, but Will didn't. The girls also focused on their work. Will could sometimes hear small sounds from another room, but they seemed more like stress relief than anything else. After a tough week, and with their first album almost ready to record, they decided to go out and celebrate. They started at lively clubs in the 4th Street area and then moved across Congress to the busy East 6th Street, famous for its atmosphere. They were using Uber to go home, so everyone felt free to enjoy themselves. Before midnight, they had another round of tequila. After making many new friends and dancing with several college girls, they decided it was time to head back to avoid upsetting any boyfriends. On the way home, he jokingly suggested fun ideas to Lena and Lila, but they laughed, reminding him that last time he made such promises, he didn't feel well. They didn't realize he was in a good mood and not drunk. He just wanted to see if they would join him in his playful ideas. They didn't seem interested, but he was sitting between them, with one hand on each shoulder, and there were no complaints. As they neared their apartment, Lena looked a bit nervous, and Lila seemed distracted. He asked for a friendly gesture from each of them before they went inside, and he felt the warmth of their hands. Even though both seemed willing, he sent them to their bedrooms, tidied up, and laid on his bed. He listened to their laughter through the thin wall for a while, and soon after, he heard a soft sound. He thought it was Lila, but she seemed tense, maybe too much so. Will waited a few more minutes before quietly moving through the living room to their door, which was slightly open. He slipped into the dim room and quietly watched what was happening. Lila was having a good time with Lena, who insisted that it was Lila's turn to go first. Lila didn't mind at all, but she felt strong emotions because of Will's actions. If he had knocked at the door, she would have been with him right now. Still, this was better than being alone, and Lena would understand her feelings soon enough. Lena was supporting her while they chatted. She was deep in conversation when she sensed someone approaching. When the situation shifted, it became more intense and felt overwhelming for her. In response, she expressed her feelings strongly. A playful gesture caught her off guard, and she began to react. She felt a mix of distress and tried to regain control. Feeling overwhelmed, she calmed down slightly but held on to her position. She looked up and smiled. "Take good care of her. She thinks of you often but finds it hard to express. Now she has to face her true feelings. Focus here while I handle this," he instructed. Like a gymnast, she adjusted herself to keep her balance. Before she could turn, she kept her attention in the right place. Her voice grew louder, and her movements became more urgent. She didn't need to see who was there to know. She accepted everything being offered, pushing back until it felt intense, heightening the moment. She wanted to share an experience with him that felt beyond anything else. She aimed to connect with him better than ever, and she was succeeding. The feelings were more powerful than anything before, and he was trying hard to hold back. He refocused, expressing his emotions, which led to mixed reactions. She chose to respond in that moment, and things became overwhelming. All her attention was on what was happening. She started to tremble as the strongest feelings of her life flowed through her. In that moment, she felt a surge of emotion, intensifying everything further. It was more than what they already felt. He reacted strongly, and emotions were high. She struggled to manage her feelings, swallowing hard to stay composed as emotions spilled out. She leaned forward, taking him with her. She was caught between her feelings and felt overwhelmed, finding it hard to breathe. He understood what was going on and, still holding on, rolled to the side with her. She wriggled free, sat up, and exclaimed, "You two almost got the best of me, and then you tried to control me. I don't want to be in this position again." That made him laugh, but she didn't respond. She had passed out. She shouted, "That's not funny!" expressing her annoyance. She wanted to be strong, but instead thought, "Wow, you are a lot to deal with. No wonder I almost felt overwhelmed after this." When he sensed the tension, he instinctively backed away, still feeling the moment. She looked on in amazement. "You really didn't keep that to yourself during this. There's no way. I can barely manage this. I thought I could handle it better, and I'm a lot more used to this than she is." "Oh, I'm sure you could. Want to give it a try?" he asked with a smile. "Definitely. But I don't want her to feel uncomfortable tonight, so what if you support her like she did for you, and I come up from behind? That way it won't be on you." She considered his suggestion, looking down at her thoughtfully, and said, "Well, I do owe her one." After that night, the girls didn't hang out much. She came to his place often, wanting to connect every night, except for the times she needed comfort. On those nights, she insisted on being near him and having her feelings recognized. He offered other ideas, but she wasn't ready for that yet. Still, she found some joy in sharing experiences with him, growing more excited as she felt stronger emotions. She bought a couple of tools for their activities and felt uneasy about the attention they drew. It wasn't her actions that bothered her. She was upset that he noticed so much during their time together. She realized he could hear every little thing she did on those nights with him. She often told him she wasn't truly confused. It was just the mix of having those she cared about around her and feeling so drawn to him because she was so happy being near him. He reassured her that it was no big deal, and he actually looked forward to the day she felt more relaxed, and her presence became more obvious as she sought his attention. That earned him a teasing scolding, with her playfully promising it would never happen again. He laughed at her while nodding, making her protest, and playfully hit him over and over, though her laughter suggested something else was going on. An unexpected outcome of spending nights with Will was the blossoming of Lila's lively personality, replacing the shyness that had been there since they found her in Nashville. She started to express herself more, dressing in a way that showed her new confidence. Her stage presence changed from being unnoticed to shining brightly with her lively voice and energetic performances. Free from her old limits, Lila found a much wider singing range than she had shown before, moving with new grace and spirit. Lila's change inspired Lena to bring out her own vibrant side, leading her to create her own captivating dance while performing. After a lively practice where the girls cheered each other on, Woody called for a meeting on his patio that evening. "I'm bringing tacos for everyone. Please bring your own drinks. We need to talk about some important things that will shape our future." Everyone felt curious about what was coming next, as Woody showed a focused and determined side. He started with, "I know we are almost done with the album, but I think we need to start fresh. Something major has come up and it changes everything. I'm known as the star of this group, and this was supposed to be my third album, but I suggest we turn this into the debut album for a new group called the Billy Goat Hill Pundits. Let me explain. I'll still lead some songs, but Will's unique voice and personality connect with listeners in ways mine doesn't. He expresses deeper feelings much better. But, most importantly, we have a lively version of the twins. Lila, your voice is wonderful, much more than I expected. You bring a fascinating presence and a rare vocal range. Lena has always been full of energy on stage, but your new liveliness has her singing beautifully alongside you, making the performance even more exciting." Lila looked surprised, while Lena seemed thrilled. "Lila, you're going to sing the song you wrote about your experiences. Lena, you'll share your piece about growing up, and Danny will choose who sings his song about a challenge. So, I'm taking on a new role as the music producer for this group. We'll be reworking some of the album's songs to showcase the amazing talents of our rising stars while giving an important role to Will's strong style. Any questions?" Lila had many questions, while Lena had a few. The more experienced musicians just smiled, seeing the truth in Woody's ideas. Will felt a bit frustrated, wishing Lila had shown her talent earlier. Lena reminded him that she had brought up an idea weeks ago, and Lila responded with a playful smile. They spent long nights working together on new versions of songs and arrangements, dedicating themselves in the studio from early morning until evening in the weeks that followed. As summer turned into autumn in Austin, Texas, the weather cooled to a comfortable 90 degrees, which brought many Longhorn football fans into town for the weekend. Barry talked to the manager at Maggie Mae's and quickly set up for the pundits to play on Thursday nights. What started as a small event grew as more people heard about it in their apartment community and on social media. The venue wasn't crowded when they took the stage. Woody introduced each band member and shared a bit about their backgrounds. He warned the crowd that those expecting the sound of his previous album should leave, as this music was different. No one left. A few cheered, while most seemed unsure of his words. "We're the Billy Goat Hill Pundits, and these songs are from our new album, The Human Condition. Everyone here helped with writing or arranging the songs, but a special thanks goes to Will for his major contributions to the album's direction. Just like life, some songs are light and joyful, while others explore heavier themes. We hope you'll join us on this journey and share your thoughts after the show." Will joined Woody for their first song, which told a story about a small town run by a few wealthy families. The music had a folk vibe, with banjo duets that reminded listeners of classic tales. The audience listened carefully, taking in the words. When the song ended, there was a brief pause before the applause erupted, showing their appreciation for the heartfelt stories woven into the music. More people streamed in off the street after hearing the noise, and soon the bar was packed. Like a refreshing breeze on a warm night, Lila's song, Holier Than Thou, also known as Nueces Valley Hypocrites, had the crowd laughing, clapping, and singing along. Instead of the PTA criticizing Mama's short skirts, it was members of the church judging young people, the less fortunate, and Latinos while ignoring the wrongdoings in their own circles, exposing their hypocrisy. Cheating spouses featured husband Will and wife Lena sharing the signs they overlooked with their untrustworthy partners, as Lena encouraged anyone who had faced similar betrayal to join in singing the passionate chorus. Some audience members wiped away tears. Lila, supported by Lena, sang Mommy's Boyfriend in sweet voices, gradually leading the audience to realize that the song addressed a serious topic related to childhood experiences. There were gasps, wide eyes, and many tears. Leo set to a lively tune like The Lion Sleeps Tonight, surprised everyone until they realized it was about problems in law enforcement. The crowd went from confusion to excitement as they understood the message. Lena and Lila's song, Daddy, We Miss You, got the loudest cheers of the night. But things took a serious turn when Lila sang Pedos and Hibeos, which dealt with tough childhood experiences and their lasting effects. Will took the microphone and sang the Hank Williams classic, Your Cheating Heart, with the twins adding fun backup vocals. Lena and Woody's lively take on Ring of Fire had people singing along and dancing at their tables. The girls continued the fun with a playful version of I Wanta. Woody and the girls changed the mood with falling down stairs and running into doors, telling the story of a family trying to hide their emotional struggles and explain away injuries caused by a troubled home. This created concerned looks and tears. Will then sang The Scales of Justice, which pointed out unfairness in the court system, followed by Happy Now That You Got What You Wanted, which revealed the selfishness of a character. The audience gave frowns and shook their heads at these songs. Lila and Lena performed I Got Everything, including the kitchen sink, sharing a wife's lively story in a tough situation, which caused both laughter and mixed reactions. Woody then sang Will's latest piece, God Asks My Permission, where the wealthy character humorously boasts about his power over those who challenge him. In The Meaning of No, all four singers told the tale of a con artist struggling to win a woman's heart, stressing the importance of consent. Will wrapped up the night with I'll Never Lie to You, featuring a character making empty promises to a trusting partner. Woody thanked the audience for listening and asked for their thoughts. He received many responses. Most were positive, but many noted that the song order felt like an emotional ride, which was a bit much for some. He promised to take this feedback into account and thanked everyone again. They wanted more music and there was more to share, but they were unsure how long they could stay on stage. The manager informed them they could play all night, but needed to pause for drink sales. They mingled, chatted, enjoyed a couple of drinks, and then returned to the stage to perform a few nearly finished songs that were met with enthusiasm. They started with 6 of Woody's best songs from his first album. Then they played a mix of covers, including Appalachian folk, bluegrass, southern rock, country, and western. The audience sang and danced along, impressed by their range. A photographer and a woman were there from the beginning. She wanted to interview the band after their performance and said she was a close friend of Barry who was excited to manage them. She soon put everything together. Feeling safe from any negative stories, the band shared about themselves. They insisted that their song ideas came from careful study and not personal stories. The woman sensed there was more to it, but decided to let them keep their story as it was. That night, her entertainment report for the local ABC station hinted that there might be a personal connection to the songs. The next morning, they went back to the studio to fine-tune parts that needed work for live performances, and 2 days later, they began recording tracks. The album took months to complete, with only a few days spent recording. They wanted a sound that was both raw and refined, and Barry, the well-known producer, was very pleased. So were the critics. Meanwhile, new fans who enjoyed their show at Maggie Mae's shared clips on YouTube. Soon after, a segment on KVUE in Austin made its way to GMA, featuring non-traditional music groups and focusing on their concept music. The YouTube videos received a lot of positive feedback about the music and lyrics, though a few viewers mentioned that they didn't want to feel sadness or anger while listening to music. Will smiled. They aimed to make people think. The GMA segment created even more buzz and conversation. It included clips of the singers addressing issues like child abuse, Will speaking out against corruption, and Woody's thoughtful lyrics about important figures. As the report wrapped up, Leo played while the reporter talked about how the song expressed growing distrust in law enforcement from overlooked communities. All in all, they couldn't have asked for a better promotion before the release of The Human Condition, with songs starting to air on radio and online a week later. Like many others across the country, people back home in Brush Country watched GMA. Young adults and teens were on YouTube, while more kids used Instagram and adults were on Facebook. Clips of their performance, recorded by the videographer, were shared with followers and friends of the band. Over the next few weeks, Woody received many texts and calls from their hometown. No one knew Will's new number, but they recognized the people in his songs and shared their feelings about Woody. They also started showing their dislike to the people mentioned in their songs, which made the local influential crowd uneasy. These were people who were used to being admired or respected quietly. After their first singles came out, they performed at Maggie Mae's. Fans had to get there 2 hours early just to get a seat. They played for 2 hours to a lively crowd, taking only 2 short breaks. Many people shared their experiences on social media during and after the show. When they woke up, they found out they were trending, and their social media accounts were filled with friend requests and follows, surprising them since they had no idea this was happening. Their number of followers quickly grew as they focused on practicing songs for their next album and improving their show for different places. Barry's tech team was outstanding. It was time to perform around town to make their show even better while Barry planned their first tour. They needed new equipment for the bigger venues they hoped to play, but they needed money for it, so they took on jobs to earn income while getting ready for the tour. The next gig Barry got for the band was at the famous Scoot Inn on E 4th, an outdoor space that could hold more people than Maggie Mae's, but not too many. They set up early, and a security person was there to keep things in order until the band was ready. It was Friday, and the Horns had a home game the next night, so the town was busy, and so was the Scoot Inn. It was the first cool night of fall, with a light breeze, and the DJ had done a great job getting the crowd excited. The 2 bars made sure everyone was happy by the time the band started at 8:30. The stage was cozy and about 2 feet high, with people gathered closely around it. Woody introduced the band, explaining how they came together during a tailgate under the bright moon when Will realized he had reached a turning point in his life in their hometown. The crowd cheered, laughed at Lena's funny moments, and applauded enthusiastically when Woody talked about Lila's amazing singing and how well she meshed with the others in their songs. Danny and Gary had special solos lined up for the show, but Woody let them lead a jam session to warm things up. The jam lasted over 5 minutes, featuring a mix of blues, jazz, classical, and bluegrass, with the girls and Gary trading instruments. It was a big hit with the audience. Then Woody returned to the mic and told the crowd, "The songs in the first part of our show are from our new album, The Human Condition." Will wanted to call their album The Dregs of Mankind, which might be true, but our manager said that would scare off buyers. Before we start, a little heads up. Things might get a bit heavy during the first set. Please listen closely to the lyrics, as they might touch some of you, maybe even most of you on certain songs. Please don't leave right after the first set. The songs in the second and third sets are much lighter. You'll hear music written by our band members, who created every song on this album except a couple of classics you will know. Some of these could be on our next album, or maybe even more. Just remember, the first set tells stories about real people. Feel free to share your thoughts on the wrongdoers, but please don't take it out on us. Woody and Will started with The Plutocracy. Then the twins joined in for Leo, followed by Will's performance of The Scales of Justice. The audience in Austin was buzzing after the first song, but they grew restless after the third. The girls lifted spirits with Holier Than Thou, but the mood dipped with Cheating Sluts and Daddy We Miss You. Your Cheating Heart and Ring of Fire gave the audience a chance to connect emotionally, leading to a sing-along they fully enjoyed. The humor in "I'll Never Lie to You" resonated well, as did the heartfelt messages in "The Meaning of No." The atmosphere brightened again with "I Wanna" and "I Got Everything," before Lila and Lena shared some warnings about mommy's boyfriend, hibios and pedos, and humorous tales like falling downstairs and running into doors. As Will finished "Happy Now," it felt like everyone in the venue was ready for a break, maybe even a drink. Lively conversations began among groups and with the band members after they came off stage. Most chats with the band were full of congratulations, but many also shared how they had faced similar struggles as those reflected in the songs. The second set was quite different, featuring stories and songs leaning towards romance rather than sorrow. The music felt more upbeat and used a variety of instruments arranged by Gary and Lena. In the third set, they covered a range of classic songs from artists like George Strait, Garth Brooks, Johnny Cash, Willie and Waylon, as well as Lynyrd Skynyrd, the Allman Brothers, AC/DC, and the Rolling Stones. The whole crowd danced and jumped, completely enjoying the show, calling for encores one after another before the band could leave. Lena and Will performed "Strawberry Wine" for the first encore. Woody, Lena, and Lila sang "Fields of Gold" for the second, and they wrapped up with "When the Sun's Going Down Over Choke Canyon Lake." The crowd loved it so much that they wanted more, but that truly was the last song, even as they lingered to chat. The next day, they found out that thousands of videos had been shared on social media. The posts were shared widely among the three groups, but the songs from the album received the most interest and shares. The BGH pundits became online stars, even though they weren't quite sure what that meant. Barry told them they had to spend an hour the next night chatting with fans live on their website. They looked at each other and asked, "What website?" They wrapped up early that day to clean up and put on nicer clothes than what they had worn during practice. No one was particularly excited, expecting the usual silly questions in interviews. However, the fans turned out to be smart and well-informed about their music, making it a fun experience. Will, Lila, and Lena couldn't share personal stories behind the lyrics, but they didn't deny them either. Will guided the conversation while the girls joined in. Woody simply said none of the troubles were his fault, which was enough. Gary and Danny asked great questions about the music, leading to the best moments. They stayed on live for over 90 minutes before taking a break for dinner, and social media lit up with positive comments about their chat. Barry arranged a concert and dance on Saturday at Mavericks in Buda after the original band canceled 2 weeks before the show. Mavericks was 2 stories high and lively, filled with excited fans. The pundits wondered how their songs would go over, but it turned out that the cowboys and cowgirls had faced similar challenges as university students and others in the area, either back in the day or now. Many patrons seemed especially concerned about fairness, issues in government, dishonesty, and those who take advantage of the vulnerable. It was also clear that they strongly opposed child abuse, shown by the generous donations to the Safe Alliance and the Family Crisis Center. Setting up tables for charity donations was Lena's idea, and after their first set, she took charge of explaining each charity's goals. She received heartfelt thanks from charity representatives after the show. The bartender brought a tray of drinks to the stage right after the set ended, and the members mingled with fans and friends around them. Will had just stepped into the crowd when he felt a big hug from behind. "Guess who?" a deep voice shouted, and Will laughed, asking to be set down. He was placed on the ground where he met a friendly dark-haired woman named Sierra. They laughed and talked for a few minutes, catching up about friends who were there and making plans to meet up after the show, depending on who felt like celebrating afterward. "You always made me want to celebrate, but it used to be for fun," Sierra said above the noise. "Tonight it's because that story is so touching. I want to help your kids." "Those songs don't really show everything about my kids," Will reminded her. "Lena and Lila wrote two based on what they've been through, and Danny helped me with one. But I do think there are important issues with my kids, more about neglect and emotional support. My daughter seems to be feeling more withdrawn and unwell, and that needs to be addressed. I can't do much due to the court orders, but I'm thinking of hiring someone." "Give us a week, and we'll do what we can," Sierra promised. "If we can't find a way, hire someone. No one should hurt those kids, especially with everything else going on." The second set was very well received. They finished some of their songs and improved others, and the lively music made people laugh, dance, and try to sing along. The songs that got the biggest reactions were High Flyers, about careless parents who ignore their young kids, and Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed, which Woody called Will's Story. The lively third set ended with Strawberry Wine, Fields of Gold, When the Sun Goes Down Over Choke Canyon Lake, and, for the first time, they closed with I Love You So Much I Could Burst. Their reunion with friends was delayed by the encores they had to play, but it finally happened an hour after the show at a B&B near Driftwood. After having some snacks, Woody sent a message to Barry asking to perform at the Country Fair and Hog Cookin' in their hometown the second weekend in April. Just after 3 in the morning, Barry talked on the phone with Sierra, who organized the big dance, and they agreed on a good deal for the band's performance, no money, but plenty of drinks and barbecued food. After dealing with their hangovers and stretching out from sleeping on couches and rugs, they made it to their reservations at Salt Lick at 2:30 p.m. They enjoyed the meal, hugged goodbye, and parted ways like good friends, making promises to stay in touch. Then the band went back to work. They received so much attention and feedback about their first album that they began to worry that the songs might lose their impact on the audience. Woody decided to release their second album right before Christmas, so they dedicated themselves to working and practicing even harder. At the same time, Barry wanted them to be out performing, so their lives turned into an endless loop of practice, refining their sound, and traveling to shows around Texas. They got a warm welcome in Fort Worth, but didn't receive the same kindness in Dallas. The shows in the Houston area were packed with people, and tickets for the two near San Antonio sold out fast. Lila and Will found ways to deal with their stress together, while Lena played with her toys. The 3 other men chose to spend time with whoever they liked from the many people interested in them. They didn't understand why Lena didn't pick anyone from all her admirers, but she seemed happy, so they left it alone. Meanwhile, money was coming in, and after Sierra and her friends finished their questions about Will's kids, he decided to spend a part of his earnings on the best investigators he could find. They were good at blending in with the local crowd, and they started their work while Will focused on writing, practicing, playing, singing, and doing interviews. At this point, everyone in Texas and across parts of the country who watched TV or used social media knew about them and their stories. Their fame lasted longer than the usual brief spotlight. Most reports talked about what everyone already knew, but a few stories looked into the deeper issues in Cowtown, drawing connections that Woody and Will chose not to discuss. Because these segments were short, they managed to sidestep direct questions by sharing insider details about the songs in their upcoming album. The surprise came when Woody and Willie were invited to be guests on a podcast with over 1 million subscribers nationwide. Neither of them had heard of cheaters the rest of the story before, but Barry's assistant set up a 30-minute session at their practice space. They met the lively young female host and took their seats as instructed, facing her and one of 3 cameras. After a few minutes, it became clear to them and the band members watching that this interview would be serious, and they couldn't just offer simple answers or share minor details about their next album. The host had documents: Will's divorce papers, the restraining order, and a notice he received from his ex-father-in-law. She began asking hard questions. Did he cheat? Did he mistreat his wife and children? Why was he arrested? Why would a social worker say she found proof of problems if he hadn't done anything wrong? At first, he thought about avoiding the questions, but since it was clear she had proof, he decided to respond honestly. No, I did not cheat. No one can show evidence that I cheated because I never did. The claims that I harmed or mistreated my children or my wife are ridiculous. You won't find anyone who will say they saw me act poorly toward my kids or wife, nor will you find proof in any medical or hospital records. Why? Because it never happened. To understand why the judge decided in favor of my wife and her partner, you should ask the judge himself, who happens to be her partner's uncle. The social worker is related to Sarah, too. While I doubt that affected her report, you might want to ask about their connections. The host smiled and replied, I did. I looked into all that. I even spoke to 47 people in the community about your character and whether they thought you treated your children or wife poorly. 22 of them wanted to stay anonymous, but when I promised that, they all agreed with the 25 who spoke openly right away. I won't go through all 47 responses, but the summary was a clear no, absolutely not. Most of them said you seemed to be the main caregiver for the kids and their favorite parent, and that the children's grandparents felt the same. Interestingly, none of the 47 had nice things to say about your ex-wife Sarah or her partner Donnie. Many liked your former father-in-law, but thought he only supported your ex because she threatened to keep the children away from him if he didn't. They also had less than kind words for the judge, the sheriff, and the social worker. I tried to talk to the sheriff, the judge, and the social worker, but none would agree to an interview or give a written statement. So, Mr. William Andrew Callahan, it sounds like some of the songs on the BGH Pundit's first album relate to your life. Am I right? Will, still feeling frustrated, was ready to agree, but Woody stepped in. Miss Daniels, we will let your research do the talking and let you and your viewers come to your own conclusions. She smiled but gave him a look when he wouldn't let Will answer her next questions about the songs on the album related to child welfare. Woody smiled back and pointed out that not every song was solely written by Will. All the band members helped share their views in The Human Condition, explored in the album. When she asked about a song on their next album about children raised by parents who don't focus on them, he simply said they would leave that interpretation up to her and her viewers. She then looked over the lyrics of The Scales of Justice and Leo, sharing what she learned in her interviews about the judge and sheriff from people in Cowtown. The feedback was not positive and matched the song lyrics. Will felt unsure about whether to be happy or worried, but he realized their small attempts to voice concerns and careful approach might not be enough in the future unless someone actually watched the podcast. They did, in fact. Her subscriptions almost doubled in the week after the interview aired, and the influential people in Cowtown were feeling the heat. Not only did Cheaters, the rest of the story, gain more followers, but Carla Daniels also found an audience among those more influential, selling parts of her podcast and research to TMZ, which used its resources to dig deeper. What started as a sad story from a man who felt wronged turned into a thorough investigation into issues in a small Texas town. Will realized things had become serious when he received lawsuits for defamation along with orders to stop certain actions. He laughed it off and called Barry, who got in touch with a skilled lawyer he knew. The lawyer asked Will to come to his office in a tall glass building that blocked the view of the Capitol as soon as he could. Will and Woody made an appointment, dressed nicely, and took a ride downtown. Their young lawyer, James Savage, seemed very sure of himself but promised to fight the claims against them convincingly. He told them to always be honest in interviews to avoid any embarrassing surprises later. He also recommended they not reply to media questions about the lawsuits. They agreed and learned more about proving defamation under Texas law. They needed to show 3 things: that the defendant made a false statement to someone else, that this statement harmed the person's reputation or material well-being, and that it was done either carelessly or on purpose. I'm familiar with your songs, Mr. Callahan. Having visited places like Maggie Mae's and Mavericks, I'm a fan. I also watched both Miss Daniels' podcast and the follow-up from TMZ. Their lawyer may not fully understand the facts around your divorce. If they can somehow show the songs are about them, that you made false statements about them to the public, and that these statements caused harm to their reputation, they may have a case. However, they face some challenges, starting with gathering evidence. I assume you'd like me to collect information from anyone who might know something relevant. If so, I'll need names and contact details. Once you have the list, we can meet to talk about what they might have. Since the songs you wrote reflect your true experiences and Ms. Daniels' research is reliable, and I believe we will do well in the first test. By the time we go to trial, we will know what TMZ found and what we discovered, which likely means we won't have to do a lot of investigations. We might use a few investigators, but... No need, Mr. Savage. I hired investigators almost 3 weeks ago. My friends helped them get into the community, and they have been gathering information since then. Their first report is due next week. You are not only a talented songwriter, Mr. Callahan, but you are also a wonderful client. I assume you were ready for this lawsuit? Yes, but more importantly, I want proof that the legal processes were not correct, that the social worker wasn't honest, and that the sheriff is not trustworthy, just like the judge and others in the Smitherman family. Most importantly, I want proof that they are not taking care of my children because I want full custody when the truth comes out. Ah, I see. Then I will stop wasting time and bring in our family law attorney right away so we can prepare our responses to reach those goals. He made a call, and soon after, a young Latina woman entered. Will, let me introduce Drusilla Rodriguez-Drew from our family law practice. Based on my talk with your manager, I gave her a brief overview of your situation. She is also a fan of your music and comes from Laredo, so she understands Cowtown. I think she will be a great representative for you. Woody, come next door with me. Let's grab a cup of coffee and chat while they discuss things. Sometimes you just feel a connection, and before long, as they talked about mutual friends and Drew shared details about his hometown, they became friends. When she returned with the others an hour later, they were close, and Drew, a passionate advocate, now had a cause to support. Drew and James met in another room for a short talk. Then James spoke to Will. If I may guess, your main goals are, in order, get the restraining order lifted so you can see your kids, establish your right to visit them, and respond quickly to the defamation lawsuit since it might impact your music. Those are definitely my top priorities, but I have more. Can we also sue to allow my parents to see their grandchildren again? They have been kept away since all of this started. I'm sure Mrs. Rodriguez will make this a top priority, James replied. To keep you involved, Mr. Savage, do you want to counter-sue for the damage to my reputation caused by their lies, especially the claims that I hurt my children and wife? Also, feel free to add anything else you think we can address in court. I have enough resources now to do what I should have done right away. Savage had been held back until now, but his wide smile and excited response made Will and Woody feel he was ready to fight for what they needed. You are making me so happy. You might just be my favorite client ever, and we've only just started. We can work together on these cases, which will make everything more exciting. We will also include legal fees for Drew since their lies led to you losing your rights as a parent. In a serious tone, Drusilla warned, "You were lucky she filed for divorce when she did, and that the judge moved quickly. If what I see in this folder is right, your financial situation has changed a lot. Because of the original petition, I'm sure they will want to rethink dividing the assets and support for your ex-wife, and maybe even child support." Will stood firm. Two things. First, I didn't know back then that our music would reach so many people and create chances for us to earn money. Second, I'll do anything for my kids, but their mother and her partner deserve nothing. Don't worry, Will. These folks are big fish in a small pond, but we've dealt with much bigger challenges. We will protect you, but they have no idea what's coming. With Drusilla's confidence boosting him and the hope of spending Christmas with his kids, Will spent a significant part of his resources on gifts for Andrew and Sarah Lynn for the birthdays he missed, and for Christmas presents his sources hinted his kids wanted. The studio was booked 2 weeks ahead for their second album when Will surprised everyone with a suggestion. "Guys, we got a lot of exposure from the first album, and I believe we need songs about real life in every album we create. So, I'd like to explore some of Lena's blues songs and Lila's Appalachian folk and bluegrass music. We don't need to do any covers, and we should space out the protest songs I've written. I think our second and third albums should be genuine but more varied. We have too many talented musicians to stick to just one style, and I truly believe that the songwriters can create lyrics for any music we come up with." I listened to Lila's audition tapes again the other night when she went to bed early, and there are some real gems in there. That made me listen more closely to the ones Lena provided, and these girls are amazing writers, singers, and musicians. I had my say in our first album, and I can't tell you how much I value you all supporting me and letting me share my ideas. I still have a lot to say, but so do our ladies. I know Gary and Danny have things they want to express and share too. Lena, Lila, and I offered to help you share your feelings if you agree to push us musically and help us improve as a band. Woody, my friend, I think it's time we start on a song or two about how silly it is to try to change a country artist into something else. Maybe we can also write one about how real friendship can help those in need. Barry was surprised when he got the updated song list for the BGH Pundits Unfettered. After he and the producer listened to the last practice recordings, they got excited and began preparing for the studio. Like before, their goal of practicing perfectly meant they spent only a few days in the studio. Gary, Lila, and Lena worked their magic by layering different instruments, and the final songs showed off both the pundits' musical talent and the meaningful lyrics. Seeing the excitement of their Grammy-winning producer as they listened to the final album was rewarding, and they took his advice on videos for some of their more heartfelt songs. Barry's kids, who knew a lot about media, also had plenty of ideas. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were just as busy with video projects as the previous months were with making music. At the same time, Savage and Rodriguez were dealing with matters related to the people involved with the first album's songs. After filing to lift a restraining order and a custody petition, Drew requested a new judge to handle the case as the current one had personal ties to those involved. She also wrote to the Texas State Board of Social Worker Examiners and the Department of Human Services, asking for a new social worker who wasn't related to or friends with the children's mother. Additionally, she insisted that this new worker talk to the kids without their parents present. Meanwhile, Savage filed lawsuits against Sarah and Donnie for spreading false information about William Andrew Callahan and against the sheriff and social worker for giving incorrect testimony in court. He also sought to have the judge removed due to personal connections with the people being sued. Will finally gave his phone number to Timbo and Sierra, who used their minutes to update him on the responses to the lawsuits and the aftermath. Until then, no one had dared to stand up to the wealthy families that controlled their town and county, but now those affluent members were facing serious questions. From what they saw and heard, the community described Donnie and his dad as very frustrated, Sarah and her parents as confused and worried, and the other important figures as anxious and troubled. The reports made Will and Woody feel excited and full of energy. Many drinks were raised in honor of their hometown boys in local pubs, and their music was played non-stop on jukeboxes and in cars with the windows open. Old feelings of frustration toward those who neglected the community began to show, and suddenly, going out became uncomfortable for the Smithermans, their family, friends, and supporters. The band celebrated Thanksgiving at the ranch near Tilden, providing only 3 fried turkeys and cold drinks for the afternoon games. Their guests from Cowtown brought additional turkeys with all the sides and various desserts, arriving with their kids at 10 a.m. By noon, the turkeys were cooked, everything warm and ready, and the food waited on the counter and stove. The youngest kids went first, followed by the bigger kids and adults. Woody offered to let Lena and Lila join the younger kids, but they said no. Before everyone took their seats in the dining room or outside on the deck, Paco stood up to speak. As you know, I come from a very simple background. Many of you do too, so you'll understand our family tradition. We didn't have much, but we were grateful for what we had. I ask each person to share one thing they are thankful for this Thanksgiving Day, and everyone will reply, Amen. We can start with the kids and go around the room. Julio, mijo, you've been doing this for a while, so you go first. The answers varied, with some being quite thoughtful, but Will's answer was clear. I'm thankful for all the people in my life who care about me. There were cornhole and horseshoe games in the yard all afternoon, with different levels for children, beginners, and open players. The TV was set to the Cowboys' Thanksgiving Day game, but it got only a little attention. Many complained that the traditional Longhorns-Aggies game was gone after A-Day NDM moved to the SEC, where they had a hard time keeping up. The evening meal featured turkey sandwiches on homemade bread, followed by a concert without electric instruments. The band played all the songs from their last album and shared some from their upcoming album, set to release in early spring. They noticed how their friends reacted to the new songs, remembering that their responses often hinted at future success. They also played popular songs on request, including every track from Human Condition, and then shared funny and lively updates about events back home. By 10:30, the celebration wrapped up by everyone's agreement. Everyone said goodbye, and the people from Cowtown traveled west. The musicians packed up their instruments and looked forward to a restful night. Even though Lila and Will woke up early, they were the last ones to join everyone for breakfast, brushing off playful remarks to make an announcement. Lila, Lena, and I have finished 3 of Lila's songs and 4 of Lena's. I might have offered some lyrics, but they really brought the heart and soul to the songs and did all the arranging. I think everyone is going to love them." Once the excitement settled, he added, "I've written a few new songs too that I want you all to arrange. Don't ask me when I found the time. They just came to me. They're a bit different, but I really like them." The first performances started a little after 10 and wrapped up just before noon. Everyone agreed that all the songs should go on album 3, and many of them would likely become popular singles. They still needed some work, so they spent the afternoon on the deck, enjoying the cool November weather. Soon enough, they would move to the practice garage, but for now, they only needed to make some final adjustments. The band worked together well in the comfortable South Texas setting. Maybe it was the peaceful surroundings or the feeling of being valued for more than just their music. Or perhaps they just worked better when they felt relaxed. Will sometimes struggled with his problems, but the chaos was happening 70 miles away. The messages from their first album had reached a larger audience than expected. People in Cowtown were unhappy, and outside influences were beginning to affect their small town. After putting their instruments away, everyone started enjoying their drinks when Will's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, frowned, and walked inside. "What's going on, Dad?" he asked, clearly worried. "I can't share everything right now, son, but I have 3 people here who want to speak with you if you're willing. You're on speakerphone, so—" "And who are they?" he asked warily. "Your ex-wife and your ex-in-laws. I know you might not want to talk to them, but your mom and I think it would be good for you." "Sorry, Dad, but I can't. Remember the restraining order? I've been to jail once, and I don't plan on going back." "Will, it's Al. Peggy and I aren't involved in the order. Would you talk to us?" "Why should I, boss? You 2 abandoned me when things got tough. I can't see any reason to do you a favor. Besides, there's nothing you can say that will change the past or make me feel differently about the lawsuits. We're just wasting time." "Son, I know. I don't want any pet names. You lost the right to decide this when you went along with your daughter saying I mistreated her and my kids. She was not honest, and you both know it. But let me say this, Al. When I get full custody of the kids, I'll let you and Peggy visit them at Mom and Dad's house sometimes. That's more than your daughter has done for my parents." Sarah cried, "Will, please don't take my children." "Remember the restraining order, Al? I can't and won't talk to anyone on that list, and that voice sounded just like Sarah." He heard whimpering and sobs in the background. Then the voice said, "Daddy, tell him what I said and let him know I'll get the restraining order lifted soon so we can talk and he can see the children." Al asked, "Did you hear that?" "No, I told you I cannot and will not communicate with anyone named in the order. If you want to say something, say it now. Otherwise, I'm ending this call." "Okay," Sarah says. "No, I'm not taking any chances. You've already caused me enough trouble and I won't risk it again." "I understand, Will. I'm just asking you to think again about your custody request. Sarah may have hurt you, but she is a good mother, and losing the kids would be really hard for her." Will scoffed. "A good mother? Is that what you think? I disagree. I was a better father than she is a mother, and she has caused me so much pain. She lied to get custody and denied me visitation, damaging my reputation. I went from being a caring father to someone accused of wrongdoings, so don't expect me to feel sorry for her. I don't. Besides, from what I've learned, there has been a lot of neglect in that home since she started her new relationship. My investigators have proof that my children have been left with others far too often, and there are concerning rumors about her current partner's behavior toward my children." The sobbing grew louder, and Will listened quietly, feeling satisfied until it calmed down, and he heard Sarah talking to her mom. "Will, this is Peggy," she said between breaths. "Is there anything Sarah can do or that we can do to fix things between us?" "Have you listened to the album, Peggy?" "Yes, a lot. And it makes me really sad." "If the songs make you sad, think about how it affected the songwriter. Can any of you change that? If not, please pass the phone back to Dad." "Take it off speaker, Dad." "I did, son." "Don't give them false hope they brought this on themselves. I loved their daughter and did my best at my job, and they tried to ruin me. I have no plans to change my mind. If you start to feel unsure, just remember they denied you your rights as grandparents, too." "I understand, Will, but believe me, son, the pain is widespread, and there is more to this story than you realize. One thing is clear. No matter what happens in court, this community is already changing a lot. Good. That's exactly what I want. Let's talk to them a bit more. I think Sarah now sees how strong your anger is, and she understands the results that may follow. Maybe we can help you see your kids faster without waiting for the courts." "Maybe, but don't promise them anything for me. I hold grudges and won't back down. There will be big consequences this time." Sarah didn't get the chance to lift the restraining order. With Will's strong support, the threat of a court review, and growing public pressure, Judge Smitherman decided to step away from all cases about his family. The new judge came from a list managed by the state of Texas. He had just retired at 62 and was already familiar with issues in Cow County before Will's music became popular. He acted quickly once he took over. After planning a meeting to address Will's request to end the restraining order, he made Child Protective Services, CPS, reopen the case and interview all the witnesses again. Faced with pressure from the media and the public due to Will's album, Clara Jones, the social worker who had ruled Will unfit resigned and disappeared. The new social worker checked in on the kids and their mother. The children shared all the good things they had about their dad before. When asked about life without him, they revealed some troubling updates about how they felt with their new stepdad and how their mother had changed since their dad left. When San Juana Ortiz entered the room, the mom felt uneasy. This woman had known her since she was young, and Sarah wished she had treated her better. San Juana wasn't family. If she repeated bad things, the kids, their closest friends, and probably both sets of grandparents would correct her, and San Juana would tell the new judge. If it turned out she had lied, Will could very likely get full custody, and Sarah would find herself in the same position she had put him in, not able to see her own children. If she continued to lie and Will won anyway, she feared he might keep the children from her out of anger. Stuck if you do, stuck if you don't, she thought. She hesitated and stumbled over her words until the caseworker got frustrated and asked, "Are you taking back what you said before, Mrs. Smitherman? Because I don't hear any claims of abuse in what you just said that were clear in your earlier statement." She tried a new tactic. "That was a tough time. I struggled a lot, and the medicine I was on for my anxiety made it hard for me to remember everything from that interview. Let me clarify, Mrs. Smitherman. Can you tell me about the times when your former husband, William Callahan, allegedly hurt you or your children? Before you reply, I should let you know I can check medical records to verify what you say." Sarah thought about the question, trying to find an answer that would cause the least trouble. Finally, she said, "I can't remember any time Will ever hurt me or the kids." Mrs. Ortiz sighed. "Then can you tell me about any times when Mr. Callahan supposedly caused you or your children emotional pain, as you mentioned in your last discussion with Clara Jones?" Sarah tried to think of a way to change her earlier comments, deciding to say she might have been misled by others. "Mrs. Ortiz had known Sarah and Will all their lives and had her own children, the oldest of whom Will coached. Sarah noticed that Mrs. Ortiz looked doubtful. "I've known you your whole life, Sarah," Mrs. Ortiz said. "It's hard for me to believe you would let your partner influence your answers about whether he is abusive. You have always been strong and organized." "Do you want to change your statement? Are you trying to clear your ex-husband's name?" With a bit of defiance in her eyes, Sarah replied, "No, I have nothing more to say. I've shared what I remember." San Juana Ortiz stood up, shook hands with Sarah, gave her a quick look that showed her disapproval hidden behind a polite smile, and said, "The judge wants my findings as soon as my report is ready. That will be tomorrow at 10. If you think of anything to add or change, let me know by 8 a.m. Otherwise, I'll see you in court." Her last words were firm, and Sarah understood the message well. She was at risk of losing her children to her ex, and there could be consequences for claiming false things. Maybe Will having custody wasn't such a bad thing, Sarah thought. As Donnie got more involved in politics, they spent more time at local and state events, often leaving the kids with her parents for longer periods. Her parents loved being with their grandchildren, but worried that her frequent absences were almost neglectful. This made her feel guilty, although not enough to stop going to fun events with Donnie. To help, she hired a few babysitters who were happy to stay overnight or even for a couple of days if the pay was good. She knew that the babysitters mainly kept an eye on the kids and fed them convenience foods, but she worried about the stories they might tell later. Will always was the better parent, she reminded herself with a sigh. He will have both sets of grandparents to help when he attends to his duties. My parents seem to respect him more than they do me, and I know he will eventually let them back into his life. Donnie doesn't mind taking care of Will's children, so he will be happy for them to spend time with him. I will miss them, but this gives me more time to travel with Donnie, which is a good trade-off. The fact that she didn't notice fewer social invitations as Donnie aimed for political success says a lot about Sarah's view of the world. Sarah wasn't the only one in a dreamlike place. The local leaders believed they were safe from outside influences, fairness, and justice. Then a new band released music and videos, and suddenly things began to change. As the comforting cover fell away, the truth began to show. Sheriff Alderman already had a competitor for the March primary. Juan Garcia, who had just retired after 20 years in the Army Military Police and served in various combat zones, had come back home to help his aging parents after teaching at a military academy in Missouri. People knew that the local police were under suspicion for unfair practices, and many thought Juan would win the election easily. The 65-year-old judge also had a challenger in the primaries. A local woman with a degree from Texas AANDM and a law degree from the University of Texas. She had a lot of experience as an assistant district attorney and in private practice. Married to a local doctor, they had 4 children who did well in school and sports, winning many awards along the way. Since the judicial district included more populated areas, Judge Smitherman's position looked uncertain. There were rumors that support for candidate Sylvia Cardenas was growing in both Atascosa and Cow counties. After all, Judge Smitherman had been called out by Will and had to step back from any case where there was a conflict of interest with Will's lawyers. His long-held influence had kept the community under tight control for years, but change was on the horizon. The county judge, known for his ability to work with others, faced a strong opponent, Tim Garza, who had support from local leaders and also received help from a band that created catchy songs for his campaign. The 2 county commissioners up for re-election were also facing challengers from outside their usual circle. In a surprising move, Tim's wife, Sierra Garza, announced she would run for tax assessor collector against a questionable incumbent. A large credit union from San Antonio said it would open a new branch in Cowtown, giving the community another option besides the local bank, which many felt was taking advantage of them. Not long after, International Trade Logistics, ITL, announced plans for a big distribution center close to Cowtown and started advertising jobs with attractive benefits, like higher pay and strong support for employees. With such exciting job opportunities, the people of Cowtown quickly filled out online applications, hoping for a change in the job market. This meant many lower-paying jobs would open up, encouraging local businesses, including those linked to the Smitherman family, to raise their pay and benefits to stay competitive. However, many workers wanted a fresh start away from the negative work culture that defined the Smitherman's businesses. The plant run by one of the Smitherman family members seemed particularly targeted in the ITL ads. At the same time, IRS auditors were looking into the tax records of the business and its manager. Donnie Boy IV was feeling anxious, and he, like others in the wealthy group, was starting to feel the effects of his own choices. While the justice system was taking its time, the BGH pundits were busy practicing, performing in dance halls across Texas, and working on their third album. They debuted every song in various places and felt confident this album would be the hit they had been hoping for. The final lyrics were crafted with help from Lila, Lena, and Will, along with some ideas from Woody. The arrangements were a team effort, with big contributions from Gary and Danny, and the videos under development showcased the creativity of their tech team and manager. While the band members were talented musicians, they didn't always grasp their fans' needs or the technology that younger listeners enjoyed. Each band member brought different musical influences, creating a mix of genres unlike any they, their manager, or the producer could remember on one album. Lila's folk background, Lena's blues and bluegrass, Danny's southern rock, Gary's mix of old and new country, Woody's red dirt style, and Will's western storytelling all shone through in the 16 tracks. Soar marked a departure from their first album. Its blend of styles allowed the musicians to show off their skills on various instruments, producing catchy melodies that drew listeners in. The lyrics were sharp, strong, and easy to remember. They could hardly wait for the early spring release of The BGH Pundits Soar. Their first self-titled album and Unfettered had already gained attention, admiration, and new fans, but news of Soar spread quickly after they introduced the songs during their performances. The music industry is large yet closely connected. What happened in Texas dance halls and concerts usually didn't matter much to the music executives in Nashville and Los Angeles. But the excitement of fans, shown through social media, ticket sales, and merchandise purchases, grabbed their attention. When major record label representatives showed up to meet a regional band at a ranch in McMullen County, it was a sign of real interest. The pundits appreciated the attention and promises but kept their cool. They weren't sure if they wanted the limitations that came with big contracts. If they signed, they would lose the freedom to explore the music styles that had drawn the labels to them in the first place. Based on Woody's experience and what he'd seen happen to others, most labels would want them to stick to a popular formula, telling them what music to create. This idea was unappealing for all the band members, and for Woody, it reminded him of a past experience he didn't want to repeat. He found it amusing to toy with his old label, keeping the big executives guessing for a while. Finally, he had their manager explain that, in today's digital world, the band didn't think the benefits were worth the loss of control and sharing revenue. They were taking a big risk, 2 opportunities lost for one offered. Yes, Turning down this chance might mean missing out on wealth and fame, but it could also let them build a loyal regional or statewide following where they could earn a good living while enjoying the music they loved. That option seemed just fine. Each member already had more money than they had ever imagined, a steady income, and they were having fun. It took a while for the justice system to look into William Andrew Callahan's lawsuits against his former wife and her new partner. However, the restraining order against Mr. Callahan was resolved more quickly. The judge dismissed the order and criticized the original social worker and her supervisors for their poor investigation. He also suggested the district attorney check into her conduct. The judge raised questions about the sheriff's actions and the honesty of Mrs. Callahan and Mr. Donald Bradley Smitherman in their statements. Concerns about the judge's questionable decisions were sent to the district attorney for further examination. Judge Adams let Mrs. Callahan keep primary custody of their home until the divorce was finalized. However, he granted Mr. Callahan generous, unsupervised visiting rights right away and instructed the parents to agree on a schedule together or he would step in. On Friday, the humble Sarah, along with her apologetic parents, met Will and San Juana at the door, presenting a stark contrast to the person who had once falsely accused him. Will looked over the living and dining rooms with a serious expression and focused gaze. "He's not here," Sarah said quietly. "I wouldn't do that to you." He quickly turned to his wife, making a sarcastic face as he replied, "Of course you wouldn't." Sarah looked pale and her parents seemed worried. Will then asked gruffly, "Where are my children?" "Andrew, Saralyn, come downstairs. I have a surprise for you," Sarah called out. The children's bedroom doors opened, and his lovely kids appeared. They hadn't been together in 15 months, and they had grown so much it made his heart ache. He realized he had missed an important time in their lives. Andrew was 9 years old, and Saralyn was 7. Because of the restraining order, he had missed 2 birthdays and 2 holidays with them. Andrew was tall for his age, with sandy hair and green eyes just like his father. Saralyn was smaller, with dark hair like her mother, but she shared Will's green eyes. Will felt proud seeing their eyes light up, the surprised smiles forming on their faces, and hearing their excited voices call out to him. He bent down as they rushed down the stairs and they jumped into his arms. They held each other tightly, no words needed. Finally, Saralyn cupped his face in her small hands and said with deep emotion, "Daddy, we missed you so much. We wanted to call you and see you, but no one would let us. Mommy said you just left. But our friends told us the law wouldn't let you talk to us or visit us. Why, Daddy? Why did you go away?" Will's gaze flicked to his wife and her parents, but before he could answer, San Juana stepped in. "Sweetheart, your daddy wanted to see you, but there was a misunderstanding. They thought he had been unfair, so they said he couldn't see or talk to you. But after I spoke to the new judge about what you and Andrew told me, he fixed the misunderstanding and said it was okay for your daddy to see you again." Saralyn looked confused and shouted, "But we told the other lady, Mom's cousin Clara, the same thing. Daddy never hurt us. He played with us and helped us with school. He is the best daddy." Andrew, sensing more was going on, looked at his mother and grandparents with a hard stare. "I don't think that's the whole story. The kids at school said everyone knows about the misunderstandings with Daddy, and Grammy and Gramps told the sheriff it was true. I don't know why they got it wrong about Daddy, but my friends say that's why Daddy has been away for so long, and I believe them." Will stood up and looked at his wife and in-laws. "Did Donnie hurt my children?" he asked, his voice icy. "And you both said he didn't?" His father-in-law quickly replied, "That's not quite right, Andrew. We were asked if we had seen anything happen, and we told them we hadn't, but that you and Saralyn had talked to us about how you felt. Will moved closer to his wife. San Juana held onto his arm and said, "Will, please don't." In a firm voice, Will said, "You, my dear wife and the mother of my kids, say I was unkind when you know I wasn't, and now you won't admit to any mistakes when you know there were some. I will tell everyone about what happened, and I will change my request about visiting the kids. As for Donald Bradley, tell him I'm looking for him, and when I find him—" "That's enough," San Juana said firmly. "You're too upset right now. Take your children to the ranch. You don't want to say things you might regret. Just go on, your friends are waiting in the truck. I'll bring their bags out." With a final look at the Parkers, Will picked up his children and took them to the van. He introduced them to Gary, the driver, and others before pointing to Woody and asking, "Do you guys remember this old buddy?" Woody smiled at them and said, "Of course, they remember their favorite uncle, Uncle Woody. Come here, you two, I've missed you." Andrew moved closer, but Saralyn jumped into his lap. He hugged her and playfully swayed her from side to side, making her giggle. After setting her down, he reached for Andrew. "Come here, big boy. Just because you are growing up doesn't mean you can't hug your favorite uncle." Woody played with Andrew just as he did with Saralyn, making both of them laugh. The ride to the ranch was filled with happy talks among everyone. San Juana stayed just long enough to drop off the bags and make sure everything was okay. Before she could leave, Will said to her, "San Juana, I need to thank you and also apologize for my outburst earlier. My patience has been tested by my ex-wife and Donnie Smitherman, and what Andrew said made me very upset. I'm back in control now, and I will avoid such talks with her in the future. Your temper is well known, Will. I'd say you handled it pretty well, given what happened. But try not to confront Donnie. That could lead to big trouble, especially with his family in the town. A wise choice might be to consider a restraining order against Donnie based on what Andrew and Saralyn say. That would help keep them away from each other when Sarah has custody. Think about it," she said with a smile before getting into her car and driving away. The kids were excited about the big ranch house on high ground above the river and wanted to ride in the ATVs parked nearby. Woody said, "Let's go," and they all piled on for a fun tour. Once they stopped the engines on a hill overlooking the Frio River, Andrew said, "I love this place. We have always lived in town, but many of my good friends live on ranches like this, and I've spent weekends with them. Saralyn has also visited. We are friends with Thomas and Angela, so we sometimes stay at the Alexanders' ranch when my mom and Brad go out of town." "Brad, huh? Is that what he asked you to call him?" Will asked. "Not at first. He wanted us to call him Dad, but we said we wouldn't because we already have a dad," Andrew explained. "Then he suggested we call him Uncle Brad, but I told him he isn't really our uncle. He got a bit upset and raised his voice, but in the end, he told us to just call him Brad." "So he's back to Brad," Woody said with a grin. "Guess Donnie wasn't formal enough." Will chuckled, which made Lila glance at him as she took the kids inside for a snack while they waited for their guests. "I'm in charge of the hamburgers," Will announced, lighting the mesquite fire he had prepared in the barbecue pit yesterday. "You all take care of the rest." By the time the coals were ready, guests had started to arrive. Along with the usual 12 friends and their kids, 3 couples with children who were close friends of Saralyn and Andrew also joined, including the Alexanders. Sierra encouraged Will to invite them, and the smiles on his children's faces showed he made a good choice. Even though the 3 couples were new to the ranch gatherings, they were friendly and knew Will and Woody from high school. They were happy to join in and easily fit in with everyone else there. The main meal was grilled burgers or cheeseburgers grilled onions, and toasted buns with mayo and mustard. People could add shredded lettuce, tomatoes, sliced avocados, grilled peppers, and pickle chips. The appetizers were tostados with fresh salsa and guacamole, and for dessert, there were chocolate chip cookies. It was a simple, nice meal for a pleasant fall day in the country. Games were ready for everyone, including some for adults and some for kids. They played horseshoes, cornhole, darts, and frisbee, marking the sidewalks for hopscotch and foursquare. Will, Lila, and Lena mostly supervised the kids, giving the parents a chance to relax for a few hours. As the sun began to set, the party started winding down, goodbyes were exchanged, and the evening chill drove the remaining guests inside. Woody and Danny gathered kindling and small logs to start a fire in the fireplace. They all sat around while the kids roasted marshmallows, and Lena and Lila made s'mores for everyone. Soon, Will's daughter climbed into his lap, sleepy and with her eyes closing. He helped her and Andrew get to their bathrooms. Andrew quickly took a shower and went to bed, but Lila convinced Saralyn to take a bubble bath with her before she tucked the little one in for the night. To avoid giving Saralyn any reasons to complicate their custody situation, Will and Lena decided to sleep in separate rooms for the first time in a long while. It was not easy, but Saralyn's dash into her daddy's room the next morning showed it was the right choice. The large waffle maker was finishing up its last batch, a third pan of bacon was cooking, and 16 scrambled eggs were in a bowl while the hungry kids waited and the adults enjoyed their coffee. A shiny new 4-door pickup truck drove up and parked outside. 2 doors slammed shut, and Will's parents walked in, instantly grabbing the children's attention. "Nana, Papa!" Their granddaughter squealed, and their grandson echoed the excitement. They spent the next few moments hugging and talking happily until Will reminded them that breakfast was getting cold. The kids insisted their grandparents sit with them, and everyone else was forgotten as they enjoyed breakfast and chatted. 6 smiling faces watched happily as grandparents and grandchildren enjoyed their joyful reunion for the first time in over a year. Will's parents were devout Episcopalians, while the band members included a mix of different beliefs. 2 Catholics, a Methodist, a Baptist, an agnostic, and Will, a former Episcopalian. They hadn't attended any church or worship service since forming the band, but that changed at 10:30 when Mom opened her bag, pulled out her Bible and another book, and handed the bag to Dad. Some of them might have chosen to skip it if they could, but when she opened the Book of Common Prayer and said they would have morning prayers, they simply waited for her to start. Dad handed out 5 more books, encouraging everyone to share and turn to page 11. He asked who wanted to read the first Bible verse and gave it to Andrew, telling Saralyn she would be next, and they began their readings. The short service inspired Lena and Lila to grab their guitars and play some gospel and modern worship songs. The others joined in singing the songs they knew, and everyone was impressed that the 2 young women remembered the lyrics and music for many songs. The games from the day before were still set up, and the kids wanted to practice to win next time. They all went to the yard to play in the warm sunshine and cool breeze. Will, Nana, Lila, and Lena played with the kids while Papa and the other men enjoyed their own games, and everyone was having fun. An hour later, another pickup truck arrived and parked nearby. Will frowned and took a step toward it, but his mom gently grabbed his arm and said, "No, son, we invited them. We know you're upset, but there's more to the story than you realize. Let them share their side of the story, and we will share what we know. Then you can decide what to do." She turned to Lila and asked, "Can you keep the kids busy for a bit? Will needs to speak with his in-laws, and we have to be present." "I'd be happy to help, Mrs. Callahan," Lila replied with a smile before joining the kids for a game of hopscotch. Before starting, Lena looked at Will with uncertainty. He just shrugged his shoulders in response. Inside, Will asked everyone to take a seat before sitting across from his parents. "Will, I understand you may be upset with us, but we had to put your children first," Peggy said gently. Will listened quietly as Peggy and Al shared their struggles and explained their decisions. After they finished, Will looked at his mother coldly. "Do you have something to add, Mother?" Beatrice saw that her son was affected, but not convinced. She knew they needed to change his mind for the sake of his children. "Will, everything Peggy and Al said is true. You may remember they supported you at first, but when Sarah stopped both sets of grandparents from seeing the kids, we met and realized we had to find a way to protect them from her anger and the Smithermans, whom Saralyn and Andrew did not like. We came to an agreement. They would stop defending you publicly but would not say anything bad about you as a parent. Sarah and Donnie had already started going away on weekends and leaving the kids with young babysitters. We were all worried something bad might happen to them, so the Parkers offered to take care of them whenever Sarah and Donnie were away. They usually left the kids with Peggy and Al for overnight trips, but they often hired babysitters during the week. For months, they were gone almost every weekend and several nights a week, returning home late and ignoring the children entirely. We discussed our options, including the Parkers thinking about seeking custody due to neglect. Then your music started playing on radio stations and online platforms. People began to talk about it, and your songs about neglect struck a chord with Sarah, making her believe everyone thought they were about her and Donnie, just like some of your other songs clearly were. After that, they began to cut back on their outings significantly. Donnie was very upset with you, and Sarah started avoiding public places because of how people reacted when she went into town, even just for grocery shopping. I know, it's ironic that she's hiding from the very thing she accused you of. Peggy and Al will tell you she now understands what it feels like to be misunderstood. Since their mother was taking care of the kids all the time by then, we agreed the kids were safe, so we decided to pause the custody case and see what you would do. When the lawsuit started, it was clear that you were taking a strong stand, so we met again to think of ways Peggy and Al could still make sure the kids were okay, while helping you understand their actions. This isn't easy, but we're trying to cover more than a year's events in under an hour, his mom said with a sigh. What else do you need to know? Will's face remained still while the Parkers and his mother spoke. He looked at each person one by one, finally resting his gaze on Al. So, you chose to back my wife, and in doing that, my image as a husband and father was hurt. But you did it for the kids? I'm not sure I understand how that makes sense. No, Al. I don't want an answer yet. Let me continue. In fact, I want to ask all my questions before hearing your replies. You always talked about how much you cared for me. But how long did you know your daughter was being unfaithful before I found out? It's hard to see you as caring friends when you let me go on without telling me. During all the time since the restraining order, not once did either of you reach out to me. If you cared, why didn't you? You must have known I was worried about my kids. Lastly, why didn't you let my parents see their grandchildren? You could have brought them over while Sarah and Donnie were away. They care about them too. Al looked around at the others before focusing on Will. The simple answer to everything but the first question is Donnie. They visited us one night after we warned Sarah about how much time she was spending away from the kids and shared concerns about their well-being. They said we were being watched, that our phones and house were not secure, and they knew what we were doing before we did. Donnie warned that there could be consequences for us and for Saralyn and Andrew if we didn't stay out of their affairs, or spoke to you or your parents again. We grandparents managed to meet a few times after that, in Laredo and San Antonio, but all four of us were worried about their threats against Sarah Lynn and Andrew. I'm sorry about the job loss. That was my chance to tell Sarah and Donnie to step back. And I didn't, Will, but I promise we had no idea about what was happening until you told us. And that put me in a tough position. I knew things were tough for me, but I went ahead and argued for a restraining order, Will said. That might not have been the best choice, even if it felt good at the time. But why didn't anyone stand by me when she made those false and harmful claims against me? You and everyone else in town knew I would never act like that. That's when we made the agreement, son, B added. We had to make sure someone was looking out for the children. It certainly wasn't Donnie or his family, and Sarah was completely under his control by then. She did whatever he told her to, no matter how unreasonable or hurtful that was to you. Al and Peggy were upset, but we knew you would want someone to care for your lovely kids, and that was the price. Will, believe me, no one thinks those stories are true, his dad shouted. From the start, I had people coming to me saying they knew it was all false, but everyone was scared to speak up. If the Parkers had teamed up with the Smithermans, as it appeared, they could lose their jobs or face worse consequences if they did. But your songs inspired this community, Will. They inspired all of us, Peggy said. It was like a bright light that chased away the darkness, and we all saw the Smithermans and their friends for who they truly were. Now that they have been revealed and other employers and supporters are stepping forward, it feels like the fear has vanished, Al said. That's why every member of the ruling group has someone standing against them, and those opponents will win. Will scoffed and then laughed. So, the pen really is mightier than the sword, at least when the threats are not real, right? All right, let's get to the main point. You've all convinced me. I might have more questions later, but I'll let go of my anger toward you. I could say forgive you, but there's nothing really to forgive you. We're just trying to do what was best for your grandkids. My kids and I don't want to keep them from your care and love. So, everything is all right now, but I do have a big request. I want to be present for the kids, but my band duties will pull me away sometimes. I hope at least 2 of you can travel with us on the weekends when I have the kids, especially if our schedules clash. That way, when I'm performing, you can look after Andrew and Sarah Lynn and maybe enjoy our music now and then. The grandparents exchanged looks and nodded. Will continued. Just to test that plan, our next 2 performances are on weekends when I don't have the kids. But we will be at the Arneson River Theater in San Antonio on New Year's Eve, when I do have them. I'll book a nice place for you, or 2 rooms if that works better. I want all 4 of you to come and help take care of Andrew and Sarah Lynn. If you can, please arrive in time for lunch with us in the afternoon. We'll go to the concert from 8 until 10 and then enjoy a river tour together. If the kids stay up, we can all watch the fireworks at midnight to celebrate a hopefully better year ahead. While they were planning, Will went to find Lila. Lila, could you and the others play games with the kids for another 10 to 15 minutes? It's time for my friend to meet the grandparents. Lila looked surprised and glanced at what she was wearing. She had on jeans and a hoodie and colorful sneakers. Her hair was in a messy ponytail. Will, I don't think this is the right time. He took her hand and smiled. You look great. The kids adore you, and they will be excited to meet you. Come on. After a moment of doubt, and with support from Will and Lena, Lila felt better and stepped inside first as Will held the door for her. Putting on her cheerful face, Lila greeted everyone with a warm smile. The grandparents were standing together until Lila and Will approached. Will smiled and said, I want everyone to meet Lila Rebecca Tate, my bandmate. Lila, this is Peggy Parker and Al Parker, Andrew and Sarah Lynn's grandparents. You met my parents earlier, but I didn't finish your introductions. Will put his arm around Lila and continued. I'm sure you've seen Lila perform and heard her amazing voice in our songs, but what you might not know is that she's also my girlfriend. The two men smiled widely, while the women quickly masked their surprise with polite smiles. After they shook hands and introduced themselves, Bea and Peggy whisked Lila away to the kitchen for some coffee and chat. Will took the men outside and introduced Al around. He reminded Lena to check on Lila, then handled the playground duties himself. Lena went inside, and the grandfathers offered to help Will. Andrew Saralyn, I've talked to your Grammy and Gramps, and I now understand some of their choices. I care about them, and I know you do too, so we'll be spending a lot of time together. Saralyn beamed and ran to her Gramps, while Andrew was uncertain but agreed when Will whispered, I'll explain later, and motioned for him to join his grandpa. The grandfathers took over watching the playground, and Will quietly went back to check on his friends. Through the kitchen window, he noticed the girls were laughing and chatting with the grandmothers. He felt relieved and went back to his bandmates. They were playing guitars, tapping on the table, and trying to come up with new songs. They stopped when they saw him. All good over there? Woody asked. Can we take that as a good sign? You can, Will said, picking up his guitar and joining in. After an hour, Lila returned outside, linking arms with his mother, and both were smiling. Lena brought out Peggy, Al, and Dad. Where are Andrew and Saralyn? Will asked. Watching a movie on that big TV with lots of channels, Dad answered. Who owns this place? Al inquired. And what's that brand on the gate? This was my Uncle Talbot's ranch until recently. He's not well, and Aunt Minnie is in a nursing home, so he wanted to be closer to her and the doctors. It was hard for him to come here to handle things, so he sold it to me, Woody explained. Why didn't you mention that before, buddy? Will chuckled. It's not a big deal. I hired a local couple to take care of the cattle and the house, so managing the ranch won't get in the way of our music. Well, since you're settling in, I have some news too. Remember Vincent's Crossing on the Nueces? The last owner ran into some financial issues and tried to invest in cryptocurrency, but it didn't work out. When he was ready to sell, I made an offer of half the asking price in cash, and he accepted it. I haven't visited since my aunt inherited it from my grandfather's estate 13 years ago. I bought it without seeing it, even though I paid a good amount for it, at least for half the price. For all I know, I could have bought something that needs a lot of work. My realtor, Tina Welch, told me he fixed up the roads and fences and built a nice lodge with guest houses, but she hasn't checked it out in years. She hardly had time to see it when he called, worried that he needed a cash buyer right away. She reached out to me because she knew I might be interested since the ranch belonged to my great-grandfather, and I might have the cash to buy quickly. I expressed interest but said I couldn't pay that much. She asked me to make a lower offer, so I offered half, saying that was my limit. She laughed, but he didn't. I think his situation was more important to him than the ranch. Woody remembers the place, but the rest of you have only seen it from a distance, looking west in the dark from Billy Goat Hill, which is a couple of miles away. The Nueces River flows through the center of the land, and there is an old county road that is now private. It features a steel frame bridge with a wooden floor that crosses the river. It must have been built in the 1800s. We used to swim in the river and have picnics under the big oak trees. Tina says almost all the old wooden buildings that my ancestors built have been taken down, and now new buildings are sitting on the hill that looks over the river from the northwest, where we love to explore. The owner has until 3 this afternoon to take anything he wants with him, which is why I decided to miss practice tonight. I really want to see the place to decide if I want to keep it or sell it, and I plan to be at the gate right at 3:00 hone. Do any of you want to come along?" Lila knew all about his secret purchase, but the others teased him for keeping it a secret. Then they said they wanted to go see it too. Will's dad had tears in his eyes. He was happy that the historic ranch was back in the family, and he gave Will a big hug and a pat on the back. "I'm glad you two are using your money to buy something meaningful. They say you can take the boys out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boys." Lila and the kids rode in Will's pickup while their bandmates rode in Woody's truck. The grandparents took the Parkers' SUV after dropping off the Callahan's SUV at the high school parking lot. Tina met them there. She was another friend from high school. She was full of excitement that the old Callahan place was once again owned by a Callahan. She handed him the keys, remotes, and a USB drive with all the access codes, including those for the security system, and eagerly asked to join them. "I haven't been out there since a gathering he had 5 years ago. I really want to see it again." "I will say this: when I was there, it was a beautiful place. I don't know about now, and the fact that he wouldn't let me come see it makes me nervous, but I'm sure it's worth at least what Will paid." Tina climbed into Woody's truck and shared stories about the historic ranch during their short 10-minute ride. There was a large, fancy steel gate at the entrance. It was controlled by remotes, with a keypad beside the driver's window for visitors. The road was made of crushed limestone over a strong base. It needed some work, but the road was raised more than a foot above the rich black soil, which they knew could become a muddy mess when wet. Tina took charge when they got to the ranch, so Woody led the way. She called Will on his cell phone, which he connected to Bluetooth, allowing everyone in his truck to hear her describe the sights they were passing. Will and Lila had seen a picture from above, but it looked very different when they got closer. They drove slowly past the main house, 2 guest houses, and a game room, all gathered around a big lawn with trees and a swimming pool. The concrete area around the pool stretched at least 20 feet in every direction. Metal tables with umbrellas and comfortable chairs were placed around the pool, along with lounge chairs. It all felt more like an upscale area in Dallas than a ranch in the brush country. Following Tina's instructions, they drove up a gentle hill behind the guest houses to a large metal building, which they guessed was about 15,000 square feet. The side facing the houses had windows and doors, along with a sidewalk and a fenced yard. In the back part of the building, there were horse stalls, while the front half had space for 3 vehicles. A wide concrete path with doors at both ends separated the stalls from the main part of the building. Most of the large building was living space, which included 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The front area was an open kitchen, dining room, and living room. They discovered that the remaining area had been used for storing riding gear, but everything was now gone. There was also a small empty office in the back corner. The living space still contained furniture and appliances, while the 3 vehicle spaces were occupied. In the first space was a powerful tractor with attachments, along with some farming tools. The second space held 3 2-seat ATVs. The third had an older high-quality motorhome. At first, they chatted excitedly as they discovered more about the place, easing Will's earlier worries. However, after seeing the barn and its contents, their walk back to the main lodge was quiet and thoughtful. Will was amazed at his good fortune, while the others feared something unexpected would happen. No one gets this lucky. When he used the code to unlock the main door to the lodge, they were shocked the lodge alone was worth more than what Will had paid for the whole property. They entered the great room, a vast space with 3 groups of couches and chairs facing large TVs, with laptops set up in cozy corners. A long wooden table with 20 chairs took up most of the dining area, which was separated from the kitchen by a bar with a granite top. The kitchen was modern, equipped with commercial appliances and a walk-in freezer. Now they stood in awe, and Tina enjoyed watching their surprise. She poked Woody in the side and said, "I told you so." "No, you didn't," he replied. "This place is much more amazing than what you described." Lila leaned closer to Will and whispered, "I agree with Woody. You made it sound like a simple ranch with a nice house, not this big mansion with a pool and guest houses." "I had no idea," said a surprised Will. "For once, trusting my feelings instead of overthinking worked out." "First time for everything," Woody and Tina said together. The rest of the afternoon was spent exploring the lodge, which had 6 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, along with the guest houses. They played billiards, enjoyed shuffleboard in the game room, and rode the ATVs on the improved trails. They were surprised to find that the last owner had left all the furniture in the lodge and guest houses, including linens and kitchen items. However, the area around the Nueces River was messy and overgrown, filled with debris from past floods. Everything else, like the fancy hunting stands, looked well maintained. The children and grandparents were starting to feel hungry, so after saying their goodbyes, the grandparents took them out to eat and then back to Sarah's house. After enjoying some cold drinks from Woody's cooler, they discussed their thoughts. "Karma? That's what it is. Or maybe fate," Woody said with a thoughtful look. "After everything that's happened, it seems that luck is finally on Will's side. First, he writes hit songs, then joins a popular new band, and now he's got this amazing deal. His ex-wife will be so jealous." "Speaking of which, what do you plan to do with the tack room in the barn?" Gary asked. "I hope you share the same idea I have, Gar," Lena added. "And I'm really hoping Will does, too." "Actually, I was thinking it would be a great place for a recording studio and practice space. What were you two imagining?" "Great minds think alike, my lucky friend. Right, Lena?" "Definitely. I'm sure we all left that room thinking the same thing. You looked at the guest houses and thought, roommates, didn't you?" "Actually, Gary and I thought the barn dominium could be a rental for musicians," Danny replied. Lena smiled. "I thought the guest house by the diving board would be a perfect home for your favorite roommate," Woody added with a grin. "And I'll be the best guest for the house next to the game room. You won't even notice when I have friends over." "But you do know we'll have to go back to Austin to record, right? And when it's time to tour, the closest airport is a long way from here." "That's true, but my kids live less than 5 miles away," Will replied. "The highway is just a few miles over that hill, and there's a nice airport with a runway for private jets on the east side of town if we ever grow to need it. Laredo is about an hour to the south, Corpus is 90 minutes to the east, San Antonio is about an hour and a half to the north, and Austin is another hour beyond that, if traffic on I-35 is moving smoothly. Lastly, Garner State Park and Con-Can are less than 2 hours to the northwest. With the Smitherman situation changing, this area could be a good place to live again. And if my lawyers are right about the money I should receive, the people who caused my troubles will buy my family ranch back from me. What do you all think? Do we go get our things from Austin and settle down here, or should we keep going back and forth?" Gary spoke up first. "Well, this isn't bluegrass country or Tennessee, but it does have its charm. I'm not really a city person, so I vote for a fresh start if I can have the north bedroom in the barn dominium." Everyone agreed, as long as they each got their preferred bedroom, and so the pundits moved to a ranch less than a mile from Billy Goat Hill. The next morning at 8 a.m., Will's phone rang. Luckily, Lila had let him sleep for a few hours, and his hangover was manageable, so he was ready when the investigators gave their report. By the end, he had 2 cups of strong, bitter coffee and was set to go. Next, he called Savage, who already had an electronic copy of the report and was excited to file new lawsuits. Will ended the call with a smile, thinking about the impact this would have. As much as they hurt him, what was coming for them would be far worse, and he planned to enjoy watching their troubles. While relaxing and feeling proud of his success, a song started to form in his mind. He grabbed his tablet and guitar, and 15 minutes later he had written "Comeuppance." Will left the office to find that Woody had run to town for breakfast tacos, milk, better coffee, and groceries for meals. Everyone else had already eaten, so he enjoyed a taco while sharing the main points of the report between bites. Their laughter and comments brought some lightness, but he still felt weighed down by the situation around his betrayal. The band was eager to create another concept album to highlight the wrongs done to them, but Will suggested taking a different route, celebrating their misfortune instead. He played and sang "Comeuppance," and the mood brightened, bringing fresh ideas for their 4th album. By Friday, the items from their practice space in Austin were in the tack room, their possessions were in their rooms, the rented furniture was collected from their apartments, and the fees for breaking their leases were all settled. Soundproof panels had been put up in the tack room studio by workers supervised by Lena and Lila while they were in Austin. Barry wasn't very happy with their choice, but accepted their promise to stick to all their scheduled plans and keep him updated. He, along with his new girlfriend and the tech team, was invited to a gathering to celebrate the success of their first 2 albums and the money they made from them. On Friday, Donald Bradley Smitherman was given a restraining order that kept him 500 feet away from Andrew and Saralyn, which he did not take well. His angry comments and threats aimed at the deputy who delivered the papers led to his arrest. Raul Medina, a deputy not connected to the Smithermans, turned on his body camera and seemed pleased with detaining Donald. The sheriff was out of state and could not step in. The booking process took a long time, but the loud sound of the cell door slamming shut had the biggest effect on Donald. He complained loudly, but there was nothing he could do until his court hearing the next day. For the first time, he felt small, humbled, and scared as he dealt with the situation. Morning brought back his overconfidence. He thought his family would fix everything. No one could treat a Smitherman like this. His father secured his release on bail of $250,000, but they discovered that the charges against him could lead to years in prison. With accusations of disorderly conduct, threatening a law enforcement officer, and resisting arrest, he faced up to 3 years behind bars. His father was unhappy with him, but was even angrier at the police officer and the judge who scolded his son. "Who do they think they are?" he fumed. "Don't they know who we are? The Smithermans own this town and county. I will make them regret this," he promised. 3 hours later, fueled by his father's anger and half a bottle of whiskey, Donald made a foolish decision to ignore the court order. He would head back to Will's house and try to take charge. If Will tried to stop him, he would deal with it. He hardly noticed the car parked down the street, but when he pulled into Sarah's driveway and stepped out, the sheriff's SUV sped toward him with its lights on. "Sir, get back in your vehicle and leave the area now! You are breaking a court order!" the officer shouted from the SUV. Defiantly, Donald cursed and shouted back, demanding the officers leave his property. They called for backup and took their positions behind the SUV. "Lay down on the ground," the officers ordered. "We don't want to hurt you, but you must follow our orders right now. No one will ever know what he thought before he made things worse." The officers didn't fire back at first, hoping he would calm down. But when it became clear he wouldn't, they had to respond. The first shot hit him, and he fell, feeling both pain and fear. He needed help and couldn't bear the shame of being taken down like this. He threw down the weapon, raised his hands, and pleaded, "Don't shoot, I give up! Please help me!" What a Christmas morning it was! The large fir tree in the lodge was surrounded by gifts. Many were for the pundits or the grandparents, but most were for Will's children, who had already received a gift every day for the 12 days of Christmas. The grandmothers fussed at him for spoiling the kids, but he reminded them he hadn't been able to give presents for their birthdays, holidays, or Christmas for a long time, so he was just trying to make up for it. The grandmothers, along with Lila and Lena, had made a Christmas feast that lasted all day. Woody's new girlfriend, Samantha Parker, was with him, and they eventually went to Woody's house for some quiet time together. She had come back on December 16th, after school let out for the break. She was an elementary teacher, and they quickly got back together. Now they were always together, and she was looking for jobs in Pleasanton ISD, close to Woody's ranch, for the next school year. Sarah spent Christmas morning and afternoon alone, thinking about the good times before she let money and power affect her choices. She had celebrated with her children and parents the night before, but today they were all with Will. The Will she had cared for since childhood, but had let go for Donnie. What was she thinking? And so she spent the day feeling sad. Even though he was in a hospital bed in San Antonio, Donnie was getting 2 gifts for Christmas, a new shoulder joint and a new hip. He wouldn't actually get them on Christmas Day, but the shoulder surgery was planned for the 27th, which was the best he could hope for this year. The hip replacement would take months, but at least he wasn't in jail. Though he was embarrassed by needing special assistance and using a bedpan, it was still better than being locked up. He knew he would have plenty of time in prison after his trial, if only he hadn't acted out of anger towards Will. The Billy Goat Hill pundits drew a large crowd along the San Antonio River, and a local television station aired their performance live as part of its New Year's Eve coverage. The crowd was lively all night, but nothing got more cheers than when Will lifted Lila from her keyboard, placed her in a chair that appeared on stage, knelt down, and asked her to marry him. That moment sparked an unforgettable reaction from the audience by the river and in many homes across South Texas watching the event. She said yes, and then he sang a sweet love song he had written just for her. As the new year began, the story of the BGH pundits grew even more popular. The gathering they held for their friends and fans on Super Bowl Sunday added to their story, especially since it took place on top of Billy Goat Hill, but that is a separate story. This one is about Will's challenges and his wish for a fresh start, and now that wish has come true. Hey, listeners of Lady Cheating Tales, if you loved today's story, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more thrilling tales on the way, so don't miss out. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next story.